Hi guys. Tonight we step quietly into the thin grey light of an American morning in the year 1790. The air is cool against your skin, and you can already smell the wood smoke drifting from a dozen cabin chimneys, mixing with the damp earth and the faint sweetness of last night's rain. It is a world that looks peaceful from a distance, all rolling fields and scattered farmsteads, the kind of scene that later generations would paint in soft colours and call simple. But simplicity is not the same as ease. And if you had to live here, really live here, waking before dawn every day to face the relentless demands of survival, you would learn quickly that the past is not a vacation. It is work, constant and unending, and it does not care whether you are ready for it. You probably will not survive this, not because of war or wilderness or the dramatic dangers that fill history books, but because the ordinary itself is exhausting in ways you cannot imagine until you have lived it. The fire must be lit, the water must be fetched, the animals must be fed, and none of it waits for you to catch up. There is no weekend coming to rescue you, no break built into the rhythm of the days. There is only the work, and then more work, and then sleep, and then the work again. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you are getting comfortable, drop a comment with where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. I love seeing this community spread across the world, all of us sharing the same quiet moment together. Now dim the lights, pull your blanket a little closer, and let your mind drift back to that cool, damp morning in 1790. When the sun is just beginning to touch the treetops and the day is waiting, patient and inevitable, to claim you. You wake and for a moment there is nothing but the dark. It is not the familiar dark of a room you know well, the kind where shapes gradually reveal themselves once your eyes adjust. This is a different kind of darkness altogether, thick and complete, pressing against your eyes like a weight. You cannot see your hand even if you raised it before your face, and so you do not raise it. You lie still instead, letting the darkness settle around you like a second blanket. And you listen. The first thing you notice is that you are not alone. You hear breathing nearby, slow and even, the deep rhythm of someone lost in sleep. It is not your own breathing you hear, but another's, close enough that you could reach out and touch them if you chose to. You do not choose to. You lie still and let the sound become part of the room, a steady presence that anchors you in the blackness. There is more than one. You begin to distinguish them now, different rhythms layered over one another, some deeper, some lighter, the breath of a child perhaps, or of someone older. The room is full of sleeping bodies, and you are awake among them. The air is cool against your face, but not cold enough to be uncomfortable. It carries smells that you recognize without having to think about them. Wood smoke mostly, faint now but unmistakable, the smell of a fire that burned hours ago and has since settled into embers. There is something else beneath it, something earthy and familiar, the smell of straw and wool and the gentle musk of sleeping bodies. It is not an unpleasant smell, though it takes a moment to identify. It is the smell of life itself, of people living close together through the night. You turn your head slightly on whatever lies beneath you, and it rustles softly in response. The sound is dry and intimate, a whisper from the thing that holds you. It is not a pillow as you might think of one. It is a sack filled with something, straw perhaps, or corn husks, or feathers if you are fortunate, and it responds to every movement with that same dry whisper. You feel the surface beneath you shift slightly as you adjust, the stuffing rearranging itself around the shape of your head. It is not soft in the way you might expect, but it is not hard either. It is simply what is there, what has always been there. Somewhere in the darkness the house itself speaks. It is a small sound, a creak or a pop, the sound of wood cooling after the warmth of the day, or settling under the weight of the night. You hear it and your body registers it without alarm. It is a familiar sound, the kind of sound that belongs to this place and this hour. The house has its own rhythm, its own way of breathing, and you have learned it without knowing when you learnt it. The creak passes and the silence returns, deeper now for having been broken. The fire, you remember the fire now, and you turn your gaze toward where it should be. There is no flame, but there is something else. A faint glow so subtle that at first you are not certain you are seeing it at all. It is the colour of embers barely alive, a soft red, orange that pulses almost imperceptibly in the darkness. You watch it for a long moment, and it seems to breathe, growing slightly brighter, then dimming again as if the fire itself is sleeping. It is enough to warm the room, though barely, enough to keep the chill at bay until morning. You feel its presence more than its heat, a reassurance that the day will come, and with it the chance to rebuild the flames. Outside there is wind. You hear it moving past the house, a low sound that rises and falls like something alive. It presses against the walls and finds its way through gaps you cannot see, small drafts that touch your face and then withdraw. The windows are small here, and covered with something thin, oiled paper perhaps, or glass so imperfect that it distorts whatever lies beyond. They rattle faintly when the wind blows hard enough, a sound so familiar that you barely notice it anymore. The wind carries no other sounds with it tonight. The world outside is still holding its breath until morning. You lie in the darkness and you think about the fact that you are awake. It does not feel wrong or strange. It feels natural as sleeping itself. You have heard it said that this is how night works, that sleep does not come all at once but in pieces, that the body rests and then wakes and then rests again. Some call it first sleep and second sleep, the two halves of the night separated by a stretch of wakefulness that is not trouble, but simply part of the rhythm. You have known this all your life, though. You have never named it. When you wake in the dark, you do not worry. You simply wait, and in waiting, you rest. This hour between sleeps is its own kind of time. It does not belong to the day that has passed, or the day that is come. It exists apart, suspended in the darkness, and in it you are free to think in ways that daylight does not permit. Your mind drifts slowly, touching on things that matter and things that do not. You think of the fire, and whether it will last until morning. You think of the faces of the people sleeping around you, their features invisible now, but known to you in every other way. You think of the work that waits, the tasks that will begin again as soon as light returns. You think of the season and what it demands, the fields or the animals or the tools that need attention. These thoughts come and go without urgency, floating through your mind like the smoke that still lingers in the air. There is something else too, something harder to name. It is a sense of the day ahead, not as a list of tasks, but as something larger, something that will unfold whether you are ready or not. You know that this day will be like the ones before it in most ways. There will be work and food and rest and then night again, but you also know that each day carries its own weight, its own small differences that cannot be predicted. Someone might fall ill, a tool might break, news might arrive from somewhere distant, carried by a traveller or a letter. The day is always uncertain, even when it looks exactly like the one before. This thought does not frighten you. It simply is, a fact like the darkness itself. The breathing around you continues its steady rhythm. Someone shifts in sleep. A rustle of bedding, a soft murmur that might be a word or might be nothing at all. The sound fades, and the rhythm returns unchanged. You feel the presence of these others not as a burden but as a comfort. The night is less vast when it is shared. The darkness is less complete when you know that other eyes have closed within it, other bodies trusting the same shelter. There is something ancient in this, something that reaches back long before you were born. People have always slept this way, close together, breathing the same air, hearing the same small sounds. It is how the night is meant to be. Your mind returns to the fire, to that faint glow that is barely there. You think of the person who banked it before sleep, who carefully covered the embers with ash to keep them alive through the hours of darkness. It is a skill learned through repetition, a small ritual performed without thought. Too much ash and the embers smother. Too little and the fire might escape, catching on something nearby and turning the night to chaos. The balance is delicate, and everyone who tends a fire knows it. You have done it yourself countless times. The last act before sleep, the final task that closes the day tonight. Someone else did it, and you are grateful without needing to say so. The wind rises again outside, a long exhalation that seems to circle the house before moving on. You imagine it travelling across fields and through trees, past other houses where other people lie awake in the darkness. Somewhere out there, someone else is also between sleeps, also thinking their own thoughts, also watching their own faint embers. You will never know them, but they exist. A whole world of people sharing this same hour. The thought is strange and comforting at once. A reminder that the night belongs to everyone, even when it feels like it belongs only to you. Time passes and you cannot measure it. There is no clock here, no way to know how long you have been awake or how long remains before light returns. You do not need to know. The body has its own sense of these things, a feeling for when the night has reached its deepest point and begun its slow turn toward morning. You feel that turn now, a subtle shift in the darkness or in yourself. It is not something you can describe, but you know it. The way you know that rain is coming before the first drop falls. The night is no longer pressing down with the same weight. It is beginning to lift almost imperceptibly, preparing to release its hold. You think again of the day ahead, and this time the thought carries something different. Not urgency exactly, but a kind of readiness, a sense that you are gathering yourself for what is to come. The tasks are still there waiting, but they feel less heavy now, more like the natural order of things. You will rise when the light comes, and you will do what needs to be done because that is what the day asks. It is not a choice, and so it does not feel like an obligation. It simply is, as steady as the breathing around you, as constant as the embers holding their warmth through the night. Someone beside you stirs more fully, turning over with a soft sound that is almost a word. You hear the rustle of bedding, and then a small sigh as they settle again. In the darkness you cannot see who it is, but you know the sound of each person here, the particular way they breathe and move and sleep. This knowledge is not something you acquired deliberately. It grew over time, layered into your awareness, like the smoke layered into the walls. You could not say when you first noticed it, but now it is as familiar as your own heartbeat. The faint glow from the hearth seems slightly brighter now, or perhaps it is only that your eyes have adjusted further. You can almost make out the shape of the fireplace, the dark rectangle where the embers lie. It is enough to orient you, to remind you where you are in the room and how the space arranges itself around you. The bed where you lie, the others nearby, the door that leads out, the window that faces east. You know it all without seeing it, the geography of the room mapped in your mind by countless days and nights. Outside the wind has quieted. The silence that follows is deeper than before. The kind of silence that feels almost solid. You listen into it and hear nothing, not even the distant sound of an animal or the creak of a branch. The world has stopped moving, holding itself perfectly still in the last hour before dawn. You feel yourself held in the same stillness, suspended between waking and sleeping, between the night that is ending and the day that has not yet begun. And then, so faintly that you might imagine it, there is something new. It is not light exactly, but a lessening of darkness, a subtle change in the quality of the blackness that has surrounded you. You look toward the window, and you think perhaps the sky is different there, a shade less deep than everywhere else. It is too soon to be certain, but the change is there. The first hint that the night will not last forever. The body knows it even before the mind confirms it. Something in you relaxes slightly, accepting that the waiting will soon be over. The breathing around you continues unchanged. No one else has noticed the shift, or if they have, they give no sign. They sleep on, trusting the night to release them when the time comes. You lie among them, awake and aware, the only one who has witnessed this first faint signal of the day's approach. It feels almost like a secret, this moment that belongs only to you. You hold it quietly, letting it settle into your awareness, and you wait for what comes next. The lessening of darkness continues imperceptibly. You cannot see it happen, but when you look toward the window again, you are sure the sky is lighter than before. It is not light as you would recognize it in daytime. Only a shift from absolute black to something slightly less absolute. It is enough. You know now that morning will come, that the night will end, that the day will begin just as it always does. The certainty of it is comforting in its own way. A promise kept without words. You do not try to sleep again. There is no need. The rest you have had, the waking rest of this hour between sleeps, has done its work. You feel ready now, not eager but ready, prepared to meet whatever the day brings. The tasks ahead are still unknown in their details, but known in their shape. They will come and you will do them, and then night will return, and you will lie here again, awake in the darkness, listening to the breathing of those you love. It is a pattern older than you, older than anyone, and you are part of it now, woven into its steady rhythm. The breathing around you shifts slightly as if in response to the approaching light. Someone sighs. A child murmurs something unintelligible. The sounds are small and ordinary, but in the darkness they feel significant, markers of life continuing through the night. You listen to them and feel connected to each person here, bound by something deeper than words. This is what it means to live together, to share not just space but time, not just waking but sleeping, not just light but darkness. It is a kind of belonging that cannot be explained, only felt. The window grows lighter still, a slow greying that spreads across the glass like water soaking into cloth. You can see it now without doubt, the first true evidence that night is ending. The change is gradual but unmistakable, a promise being kept. You watch it and feel something open in your chest, a release of the small tension that has held you through the darkness. The day is coming, it always comes. And still you lie there, not yet ready to rise, savouring these last moments of stillness. The fire will need tending soon, the animals will need feeding, the water will need fetching. All of it waits, patient and inevitable. But for now there is only this, the slow arrival of light, the quiet breathing of the household, the sense of being held in a moment that will not come again. You let it fill you, this ordinary miracle, and you prepare to meet whatever comes next. The sky beyond the window is definitely lighter now, a pale grey that holds the promise of colour to come. You think you can hear something outside, a bird perhaps, the first tentative call of morning. It is too faint to be certain, but you listen for it anyway. Straining into the silence, if it comes again, you will know that the world is waking, that the night has truly released its hold. You wait and you listen, and you are not disappointed. The call comes faint but unmistakable, a single note repeated twice. It is answered from somewhere farther away, another voice joining the first. The birds are waking, and with them the day. The darkness that seemed so absolute only hours ago is retreating now, fading like a memory. You feel the change in your body as well. A loosening of muscles you did not know were tight. A deepening of breath. The night is over. The day has begun. Around you the breathing of the household shifts, becoming lighter, less deep. Sleep is thinning now, preparing to release its hold. Soon they will wake one by one, drawn up by the light and the sounds, and the simple fact that the day has arrived. You will rise with them, or perhaps before them, the first to greet the morning. It does not matter which. What matters is that you are here present and aware, ready to step into whatever comes. The light grows steadily, filling the room with a soft grey glow that reveals shapes without defining them. You can see the outline of the window now, the rough frame, the uneven glass. You can see the dark mass of the hearth and the faint orange pulse of the embers within. You can see the forms of the sleepers around you, bundled in blankets, their faces still hidden in shadow. The room is becoming itself again, reassembling from the darkness that dissolved it hours ago. You lie still a moment longer, watching it happen, feeling the world return. The fire will need tending, the water will need fetching. The day will demand everything you have, and you will give it, because that is what the day asks. But for now there is only this, the slow arrival of light, the quiet breathing of those you love, the sense of being exactly where you belong. You hold it close, this ordinary moment, and you prepare to rise. The light arrives not as a sudden event, but as a gradual unfolding, a slow insistence that the night cannot hold forever. It comes first as a change in the quality of darkness, a softening of the black that has surrounded you for hours. You notice it without opening your eyes. A subtle pressure against your lids that was not there before. The room is still dark, but it is a different dark now. Less absolute, less complete. Something has shifted in the world outside, and that shift is reaching you even through closed eyes. When you finally open them, the light is still barely there, a pale grey seeping through the window, like water through cloth. The window itself is small and set deep into the wall, its glass thin and imperfect, full of small bubbles and waves that distort whatever lies beyond. Through it you can see nothing clearly, only the suggestion of shape and movement, the world reduced to rumour and impression. The glass has been there for years, perhaps decades, and it has its own character now, its own way of it does not so much reveal as hint, offering fragments for the mind to assemble. The shutters are closed, but they are gentlo, rough jan-hewn planks hinged together with leather or iron, and they do not fit tightly against the frame. Gaps between them allow thin blades of light to pierce the darkness, falling across the floor in narrow stripes that shift slowly as the morning advances. You watch them without thinking, these small messengers of the day, and you feel your body responding to their presence. The eyes adjust, the mind stirs, the slow process of waking begins. It is not like waking to a sound, to the sharp insistence of a bell or a call. There is no sudden transition here, no moment when sleep ends and waking begins. Instead, there is a gradual emergence, arising through layers of consciousness that feels as natural as breathing. The body knows what to do. It has done this countless times before, following the same slow path from darkness to light, from rest to readiness. You do not need to force it. You simply let it happen, letting the light do its work outside the window the birds have begun. You hear them first as isolated calls, single voices testing the morning, then as a chorus that builds slowly as more join in. They are not the only ones. From somewhere nearby comes the sound of a rooster, that familiar announcement that the night has ended. It is not a sound you have to listen for. It finds you, cutting through the thin walls and the fading darkness, claiming the morning as its own. Other animals answer in their own ways, a dog barking in the distance, the low murmur of cattle stirring in their pen. The world is waking and its voice is made of many sounds. There is no alarm here, no mechanical bell designed to tear you from sleep at a precise moment. The idea of being pulled from rest by a device, by something that does not know or care whether you are ready, is as foreign as the idea of flying. You wake because the world wakes, because the light says it is time, because the animals say it is time, because your own body has learned across thousands of mornings when the moment has come. It is a partnership between you and everything around you, an agreement renewed each day without words. The bed beneath you holds you still for a moment longer, reluctant to release you into the day. It is not a bed as you might think of one, not the soft uniform surface that modern minds imagine. It is something older and stranger, a construction that reveals its nature in every detail. The frame is wood, heavy timbers joined with pegs and tenons, designed to last beyond the lives of those who sleep within it. Across this frame ropes are stretched, woven in a tight wongur that provides both support and give. They sag slightly under your weight, creating a hollow that holds you as surely as arms might hold a child. Above the ropes lies the mattress, if it can be called that. It is a large sack, a ticking filled, not with springs or foam, but with the stuff of the fields. Straw mostly, the dried stalks of wheat or rye, rustling with every movement. In places there are corn husks, their broader leaves adding a different texture, a different sound. If you are fortunate, there are feathers as well, saved from slaughtered birds and stuffed into the ticking to provide softness. But feathers are rare and precious, more likely to be found in the pillow than the mattress itself. You shift slightly, and the filling rearranges itself beneath you, finding new shapes to accommodate your body. The sound it makes is distinctive, a dry whispering that seems almost alive. It is the sound of the field brought indoors, of harvests past and summers gone. You have heard it every night for as long as you can remember, and it has become part of the rhythm of sleep, a small announcement with every turn and adjustment. When you are still, it is silent, waiting for movement to give it voice. When you move, it speaks, telling the room that you are there, that you are awake, that the night is ending. The sheets that cover you are linen, coarse and heavy against the skin. They have been washed many times, scrubbed with soap made from ash and fat, beaten against rocks, dried in the sun. They carry the memory of all those washings in their texture, softer than new linen, but never truly soft. always with a roughness that reminds you they were once part of a plant. The smell of them is complex, layered with years of use. Soap is there, faint and clean, but beneath it are other things, sweat and sleep, and the particular odour of bodies resting through the night. It is not an unpleasant smell. It is the smell of life, of people living close together in the same space, sharing the same air, the same warmth, the same hours of darkness. You are not alone in this bed. You have never been alone in this bed, and you do not expect to be beside you. Someone else lies sleeping. They're breathing deep, and even, their body a warm presence against the cool air. Beyond them, perhaps another, a child or a sibling or an aging parent. The bed holds whoever needs holding, whoever shares this room and this life. In the corner of the room, another bed may hold more sleepers, apprentices or guests or extended family, all gathered together against the night. Privacy is not a word that means much here. The idea of a room of one's own, of a bed that holds only one body, of space that belongs to no one but yourself, is as distant as the moon. You have never known it, and you do not miss it. The closeness of others is simply how things are, as natural as the air you breathe. You know the sound of each person's breathing, the particular way they shift in sleep, the small sounds they make when dreaming. You know their warmth and their smell and their presence, and none of it feels strange or intrusive. It is the fabric of life, woven tight by necessity and habit. When you finally sit up, the air rushes to meet you, cool against skin that has been warm and still for hours. The shock of it is sharp, but familiar, a daily reminder that the world outside the blankets is not yet ready to be comfortable. You feel the cold on your shoulders, on your chest, on any part of you that emerges from the bedding. It is not severe enough to stop you, but it is present, a force to be acknowledged and managed. The fire is what matters now. The embers that glowed so reassuringly in the deepest part of the night have faded further, reduced to ash with only the faintest warmth at their heart. You can see them if you look toward the hearth, a small mound of grey with perhaps a single point of orange deep within. They have done their work, holding the night at bay, but they cannot last much longer. Soon they will die completely, and the cold will have its way unless you act. Fire is precious here, not as an idea, but as a daily reality. Wood must be cut and split and carried and stacked, each piece representing effort that can be measured in sweat and time. It must be rationed carefully, used when needed, and saved when possible. A fire that burns too fast wastes wood. A fire that burns too slowly fails to warm. The balance is learned through experience, through countless mornings like this one, when the embers must be coaxed back into flame. You swing your legs toward the floor, the movement bringing more of you into the cold air. The bed rustles behind you, straw whispering its protest at being disturbed. Your feet hover for a moment above the floor, not yet touching, knowing what is coming. When they finally make contact, the sensation is immediate and intense, the shock of cold wood against soles that have been warm and protected all night. The floorboards are old, worn smooth by years of use, but they hold the chill of the earth beneath them, and they offer it freely to anyone who touches. The shoes are nearby where you left them last night, placed within easy reach against the darkness. They are heavy things, made of leather so thick, it barely bends, shaped by the feet that have worn them, rather than any design for comfort. They have been repaired many times. Patches covering patches, the original form barely recognizable beneath layers of mending. You reach for them, and your fingers find the familiar roughness, the places where the leather has softened from years of use. You do not put them on yet. There is something to do first, something that must happen before anything else. The hearth calls you forward, that dark opening in the wall where the embers wait. You cross the cold floor on bare feet, each step a small reminder of why shoes were invented, why people have always sought to separate themselves from the ground. The floor is not clean in the way you might imagine. There is dirt tracked in from yesterday, small bits of straw and ash, the residue of life lived close to the earth. You feel it all underfoot, the texture of the day already beginning, kneeling before the hearth. You can see the embers more clearly, that small heart of warmth that survived the night. They are low, so low that you might miss them if you did not know to look, but they are there. A faint orange glow pulses deep within the ash, barely alive, waiting for attention. You reach for the kindling that was placed nearby yesterday, small sticks and shavings saved for this moment. Your hands know what to do without being told. They have done this thousands of times, this small ritual that begins every day. The kindling is arranged carefully, placed where it will catch the first breath of flame. You lean close and blow gently, a soft stream of air directed at the heart of the embers. The ash stirs, lifts, reveals a deeper orange beneath. You blow again and something changes, a small glow becoming brighter, a wisp of smoke rising. The kindling touches it, and for a moment nothing happens. Then a tiny flame appears, barely there, flickering, as if deciding whether to live. You feed it more air, more small sticks, and it grows, becoming confident, becoming real. The warmth reaches your face now, a gentle heat that promises more to come. You add larger pieces, watching each catch, each begin its own small burning. The fire builds slowly, steadily, finding its rhythm. Soon it will be strong enough to warm the room, to heat water, to cook food, to do all the things that fire does. But for now, it is enough that it exists, that the night has been defeated again, that the day can begin. While you worked at the fire, the light outside has grown. The window is brighter now. The thin blades of light from the shutters have widened and strengthened. You can see the room more clearly, the shapes of furniture emerging from shadow, the forms of sleepers still resting in their beds. The fire adds its own light, flickering and dancing across the walls, creating shadows that move and shift as if alive. The two lights work together, the steady grey of dawn and the dancing orange of flame, filling the space with a soft illumination that feels almost sacred. The birds outside have not stopped singing. If anything, they have grown louder, more insistent, as if celebrating the return of light. The rooster calls again from somewhere nearby, answered by another farther away. You hear movement from the animals now, the shift and rustle of creatures waking to their own mornings. The world is fully awake outside, even as the house still sleeps. Time feels different here. There is no clock on the wall, no watch in your pocket, no way to measure the passing of hours except by what you observe. The light tells you it is morning. The fire tells you it is time to work. Your body tells you that you have rested enough, that the night has released its hold. These are the only clocks you need, and they have never failed you. They are older than any machine, more reliable than any device, tuned to the actual rhythms of life rather than the abstract divisions of hours and minutes. In some towns, a bell might ring to mark the hours, calling people to work or worship or rest. But here, there is no bell, only the natural sounds of morning, the animals and the birds and the wind in the trees. Even if there were a bell, it would only be a convenience, a way of coordinating rather than commanding. The real time would still be the time you feel, the time your body knows, the time that has guided human life since before history began. You wait for your body to be ready rather than forcing it to obey a number. There is a difference between waking because you must and waking because the world has reached the right moment. Here it is always the second, always the natural progression from darkness to light, from rest to activity. It leaves you feeling more present, more connected to the day, more aware of the small transitions that modern life rushes past without noticing. The fire is burning steadily now, casting enough light to see the room entire. The sleepers are beginning to stir, responding to the same signals that woke you, the light and the warmth and the sounds of morning. A child murmurs, turns over, settles again for one last moment of rest. An adult sighs, shifts, perhaps opens eyes for a moment, before closing them again. The household is waking in its own time, each person following their own internal rhythm toward the moment when they will rise. You stand and stretch, feeling the cold air against skin that has been warmed by the fire. The contrast is sharp, but not unpleasant. A reminder that you are alive, that you can move between temperatures, that your body knows how to adapt. The day ahead is still unknown in its details, but known in its shape. There will be work and food and rest and then night again. It is the pattern you have always known, the pattern that holds your life together. Your feet find the floor again, and this time it does not shock. They have adjusted, become accustomed, accepted the cold as part of the morning. You look toward the shoes still waiting where you left them, heavy and patient, ready to carry you through whatever comes. You will put them on soon. Step into them as you step into the day, letting them do their work of protection and support. But for now you stand barefoot on the cold wood, feeling the floor beneath you, feeling the fire in front of you, feeling the morning gather itself around you. The window draws your gaze again. The light outside has grown stronger still, no longer just a suggestion but a presence. Through the imperfect glass you can see shapes now. The outline of a tree, the form of a building, the movement of something that might be an animal or might be a person. The world is becoming visible, reassembling itself from the darkness that dissolved it hours ago. Soon you will step into that world, become part of its visibility, add your own movement to the patterns of the day, but not yet. For now there is still this moment, this pause between the fire catching and the household rising, this small space that belongs only to you. You stand in it, feel it, let it fill you with whatever it offers. The warmth spreads from the fire, reaching across the room, touching your skin through the thin linen of your shirt. The sounds continue outside, the birds and the animals and the distant movements of neighbours beginning their own days. The light grows, steady and patient, doing its ancient work of calling the world awake. You think about the day ahead and the thought does not weigh on you. It is simply there, a fact like the fire and the light and the cold floor. There will be tasks and they will be done. There will be challenges and they will be met. There will be moments of rest and they will be savoured. The day will unfold as days always do, carrying you through its hours toward the night that waits at the other end. You are ready for it, as ready as you will ever be, prepared by 1,000 mornings just like this one. The sleepers are stirring more now, the quiet sounds of waking multiplying. Soon someone will sit up, will speak, will set the day in motion. You will be there when it happens, present and aware, part of the household that is slowly returning to life. The fire crackles behind you, a small cheerful sound that promises warmth and food and comfort. The light continues its slow advance, filling the room with the soft grey glow of early morning, and you stand between them, between fire and light, between night and day, exactly where you belong. The linen shirt lies waiting where you left it the night before, folded carefully or simply draped across a surface near the bed. You reach for it before you are fully standing, your hand finding the familiar texture in the dim light. It is thin, so thin that you can almost see through it when held up to the window. But it is not fragile. Linen is deceptive that way, appearing delicate while possessing a strength that allows it to last for years, through countless washings and wearings, through seasons of work and rest. It is the first thing you put on each morning and the last thing you remove each night, the layer that sits closest to your skin through every hour of the day. The fabric touches your shoulders and you feel it immediately, that cool roughness that is so familiar you would miss it if it were absent. It is not soft, in the way that some fabrics are soft, not gentle against the skin like a worn cloth might be. It has a texture, a presence, a way of announcing itself with every movement. The fibres are spun from the flax plant, long and strong and slightly stiff, woven together into a cloth that breathes and moves with you while never quite disappearing from awareness. As you pull it over your head and settle it onto your body, you feel it settling into place, finding the contours of shoulders and chest and back, becoming a second skin that will stay with you all day. The shirt is long, reaching past your waist, covering you to mid-jan thigh. It is the universal garment, worn by men and women, by children and adults, by rich and poor alike, though the quality varies. Yours is good linen, well woven, carefully made, but it is not fine. It has been mended in places where wear threatened to become holes. The stitches small and even, the patches cut from older garments that could no longer serve their original purpose. You can feel these repairs when you move, slight differences in thickness, small ridges where the needle passed through. They do not bother you. They are simply part of the shirt, part of its history, part of the story it tells about the life it has lived. Linen has a particular value that you understand without having to think about it. It can be washed hard and washed often, scrubbed and boiled and beaten without losing its integrity. Soap made from ash and fat attacks the dirt that accumulates through days of labour, lifting it from the fibres so that water can carry it away. The shirt has been through this process many times, has known the sting of lye and the heat of the sun as it dried, stretched across a bush or a line. It carries the memory of those washings in its smell, a clean sharpness that mingles with the other smells. It has absorbed smoke and sweat, and the particular odour of your own body. Cleanliness here is not what you might imagine if you have never lived this way. It is not the complete absence of dirt, the sterile freshness of something newly made. It is a relative thing, a matter of degree. The shirt is cleaner today than it was yesterday, because it has been washed and dried and aired. But it is not new, not untouched, not free from the evidence of having been worn. The smell of soap is there, but beneath it is the smell of you, the smell of life, the smell of a garment that accompanies you through everything you do. This is how it should be. This is what clean means when you live close to the earth and work with your body, and cannot simply discard things when they begin to show use. As the shirt settles against your skin, you begin to sense what kind of day it will be. The fabric responds to the air around you, to the temperature and the moisture and the movement of the room. On a cool morning it holds a slight chill that takes time to warm, absorbing your body heat slowly until it reaches equilibrium. On a warm morning it feels lighter, more porous, allowing air to pass through and carry away the heat your body generates. You do not think about this consciously, you simply feel it, your body registering the conditions and adjusting without needing to name them. The shirt is a messenger, telling you what the day holds before you have even stepped outside. Over the shirt comes the wool. It is heavier, warmer, more demanding in its presence. You lift it from where it hangs or lies, feeling its weight in your hands before you even begin to put it on. Wool is not like linen. It has a different relationship with the body, a different way of being in the world. It comes from animals, from sheep, that grazed in fields you may have seen, and it carries something of them with it even after all the processing and weaving. The smell of it is distinctive, faintly oily, faintly animal. Not unpleasant, but unmistakably present. New wool can be almost overwhelming in this regard. It smells so strong that people comment on it, describe it as sheep-like or raw. But wool that has been worn and washed and lived with softens. Its smell mellowing into something more complex, layered with smoke and sweat and the particular chemistry of your own body. When you first pull it on, the wool may scratch. New garments especially have this quality. The fibres rough against skin that has grown accustomed to linen's smoother touch. Even older wool can scratch in places where it has worn thin or where seams create friction. You have learned how to manage this, how to position the garment so that seams fall where they bother you least, how to layer linen beneath to create a buffer. It is a skill developed through repetition, through hundreds of mornings of adjusting and settling, until your body knows where each part of the garment should sit without your mind having to direct it. The warmth that wool provides is immediate and substantial. It traps the heat your body generates, holding it close, creating a microclimate that protects you from the cold that waits outside. Even when wool becomes damp from sweat or rain or snow, it continues to insulate. This is its great gift, the quality that makes it indispensable despite its weight and its scratch and its demanding presence. A wool garment wet from a day in the fields will still keep you warm, will still do its work of holding your body heat against you. Linen soaked through becomes cold and clinging, stealing warmth rather than preserving it. Wool, in the same condition, remains a friend, damp but warm, uncomfortable perhaps, but never dangerous. In summer you wear wool because you must. The heat makes it a burden, heavy and hot against skin that longs for air and lightness. But there is no alternative that serves the same purpose, that provides the same durability and protection. Cotton exists, but it is rare and expensive, grown far away and shipped across oceans, available only to those with money to spare or connections to trade. You have seen cotton, perhaps even touched it, marvelling at its softness and lightness, but it is not for you, not for daily use, not for the work that defines your life. Wool is what you have, and wool is what you wear. Summer and winter alike, enduring its weight in warm months as you welcome it in cold. the number of garments you own would shock someone accustomed to closets full of choices. 2 sets perhaps, one for everyday work and one reserved for special occasions, for church or markets or visits. The everyday set shows its use in every way, in faded colours and mended tears and patches covering patches. The good set is cared for more carefully, worn less often, preserved for moments when appearance matters, when you will be seen by people whose judgment carries weight. Between them, they represent a significant portion of what you own. A concentration of value that is measured not in money alone, but in the labour they contain. Every garment holds hours of work that you can trace if you think about it. The flax that became your linen was grown in fields, harvested, retted, broken, scutched, heckled, spun, and finally woven. Each step required skill and time, hands working through days to transform plant stems into thread and thread into cloth. The wool that warms you passed through even more hands, through shearing and washing and carding and spinning and dyeing and weaving, each stage adding its own labour to the final product. Then there was the cutting, the careful arrangement of pieces to waste as little as possible, the sewing that joined them together, the finishing that made them wearable. All of this work is present in the garment you wear, stored in its fibres like energy waiting to be released. This is why you treat clothing with respect, why you mend it when it tears and patch it when it wears thin, and save it, even when it seems beyond saving. To replace a garment is not simply to acquire a new object. It is to repeat all that labour, to spend hours and days that could be spent on other things, to divert resources from food or tools or animals. A worn coat is not trash. It is potential fabric that can become patches, buttons that can be reused, seams that can be picked apart and the thread saved for future mending. Nothing is thrown away without being reduced to its smallest usable form, without every possible use being extracted from it. First, in inventories and account books, you sometimes see clothing listed alongside other possessions, valued in terms that make its importance clear. A coat might be worth as much as a tool, a good shirt worth as much as a small animal. This is not because clothing is decorative or fashionable in the way later centuries would understand. It is because clothing represents stored labour, work that has already been done and preserved in a form that can continue to serve. When you wear a garment, you are wearing the hours of someone's life, the skill of hands that may be unknown to you, the accumulated effort of a whole chain of people reaching back to the fields where the fibres first grew. The lower half of your body is dressed, now covered by garments that shape how you move and what you can do. If you are a man, you are pulling on breeches, close fitting garments that reach to just below the knee, fastened with buttons or ties, or simply held by the way they are made. They restrict in some ways, limiting how wide you can spread your legs, how high you can lift your knees, but they also free you, holding themselves in place without belts or suspenders, allowing you to move without constantly adjusting. You have learned to move within them, to walk and run and bend and lift in ways that work with their constraints rather than against them. The body remembers what the garments allow, shapes itself to their demands until the demands are no longer noticed. If you are a woman, you are stepping into a skirt, lifting its weight and settling it around your waist. The fabric falls heavily, layers of wool or linen that reach to your ankles and sway with every movement. It is not light, not airy, not designed for the kind of freedom that comes from wearing less. But it has its own logic, its own way of being in the world. The weight becomes familiar, becomes part of how you know where your body is in space. The sway becomes a rhythm, a gentle counterpoint to walking. You learn to lift it when you need to move quickly, to tuck it when you work close to the ground, to manage it without thinking, because thinking would take too long. Neither garment has any give, any stretch, any of the elastic quality that later fabrics would provide. When you bend, the fabric bends with you only as far as its weave allows. When you reach, it pulls against your movement, reminding you that you are clothed, that there is a boundary between your skin and the world. You have learned to move within these limits, to adjust your posture and your gestures so that the fabric accommodates rather than fights. It is a dance you do not know you are doing, a constant negotiation between body and cloth that has become so automatic you no longer notice it. The shoes are last, always last, because once they are on you, are committed to the day in a way that was not quite true before. They sit where you left them, heavy and patient, their leather stiff from cooling overnight. When you pick one up, you feel its weight, the thickness of the hide, the solidity of the sole. This is not a shoe designed for comfort, not something you will forget you are wearing. It is a tool, a protection, a barrier between your foot and everything the ground might hold. Leather starts hard, especially when new. It resists the shape of your foot, creates pressure points, rubs in places that will later callous and toughen. But over time it changes, softening where it bends, stretching where you push, gradually becoming a mold of your particular foot. The shoe that has been worn for months or years is different from the shoe that was first made. It carries the memory of your walking, the pattern of your stride, the unique shape of your bones and muscles. It fits not because it was designed to fit, but because you have worn it into fitting, because your foot has impressed itself upon the leather, the way water impresses itself upon stone. Most people own only one pair of shoes, one pair for all seasons, for all work, for all walking and standing and moving through the world. When they wear out, you repair them, adding patches to the sole, stitching closed tears, replacing worn parts with leather salvaged from other failed shoes. When they cannot be repaired anymore, you go barefoot more than feels safe, waiting until you can afford new ones, or until someone can make them for you. The boundary between shod and unshod is porous, constantly negotiated. Indoors you may go barefoot often, saving the shoes for outside where they are truly needed. Outdoors you wear them until you cannot, until they fail and leave you exposed to the ground's sharp demands. The ground itself is patient, waiting with its splinters and its stones and its hidden sharpnesses. Animal waste lies everywhere, dropped and left, part of the landscape you navigate without conscious thought. Mud waits to claim your feet if you are unprotected, cold and clinging, and impossible to avoid entirely. The shoes stand between you and all of this, doing their work without complaint, asking only to be worn and repaired and worn again until they can give no more. You stand now fully dressed, feeling the weight of everything you wear settle onto your body. The linen against your skin, the wool over it, the breeches or skirt around your legs, the heavy shoes on your feet. It is not a small thing, this clothing. It has presence, substance, a reality that modern garments with their lightness and stretch have lost. You feel yourself contained within it, protected by it, shaped by it. It is not separate from you, not something you put on and forget. It is part of how you move through the day, part of how the world encounters you, part of the constant negotiation between your body and everything outside it. The garments carry their own history, their own stories of wear and repair and use. The patch on the elbow of your coat came from a shirt that finally gave out after years of service. The button that fastens your breeches was saved from a garment that belonged to someone you knew, someone who is gone now but whose presence lingers in this small object. The shoes have walked hundreds of miles, have known every path and field and road within walking distance of your home. You are not simply wearing clothes, you are wearing time itself, the accumulated hours of labour and life that went into making and maintaining what covers you. As you stand there, feeling it all, you become aware of something else. The clothing does not just protect you, it presents you, announces you to everyone you will meet today, the quality of your linen, the condition of your wool, the state of your shoes. All of it will be read, interpreted, used to place you in the social landscape that surrounds you. A clean shirt says something about your household, about the women who manage it, about the value you place on appearance. Patches worn neatly say something different than patches hanging loose. The language of clothing is complex and subtle, spoken by everyone even when they do not know they are speaking it. You touch the fabric at your collar, adjusting it slightly, a gesture so automatic you barely notice making it. It is the final act of dressing, the small settling that signals readiness. The fire crackles behind you, warm now, fully alive. The household is stirring, sounds of movement and quiet voices beginning to fill the spaces around you. Soon you will step into that movement, become part of it, carry your clothed body through the hours of work and rest that make up a day. But for one more moment you stand still, feeling the weight and texture of what you wear, feeling yourself held by garments that have held you through so many days before this one. Then you turn, and you step forward, and the day begins. The hunger arrives before you are fully aware of it. A gradual tightening in the stomach that has been building since before you woke. It is not the sharp hunger of missing a meal, not the urgent demand that comes after long deprivation. It is something quieter, more patient, a slow insistence that the body needs fuel. You have not eaten since the evening before, since the last meal of the previous day, and the hours between have been long. The body has its own clock, its own way of marking time. And hunger is one of its most reliable signals. You feel it now as you stand before the fire, a hollow place that waits to be filled. It is not a telltale feeling, not a desire for anything specific or special. It is simply need, pure and direct. The body asking for what it requires to continue. You have learned to recognize this feeling without letting it control you, to acknowledge it while going about the tasks that must come before eating. The hunger will wait, it always does, but it will not disappear, and soon you will turn your attention to satisfying it. The fire before you has grown while you dressed, fed by the kindling and small sticks you added earlier. It burns steadily now, a solid bed of coals with flames that rise and fall in a rhythm that feels almost alive. The heat reaches your face and hands, warming skin that was cool from the night, spreading through you in slow waves. This is the heart of the household, the centre around which everything else arranges itself. Without it, there would be no breakfast, no warmth, no day at all. A pot sits near the edge of the fire, placed there sometime in the early morning by someone who rose before you. It is blackened by years of use, its surface covered in soot that never quite washes off, that has become part of the pot itself. You can see where hands have gripped it countless times, the places where the metal has been worn smooth by repeated contact. It has been used for as long as anyone can remember, passed down perhaps, its origins lost in the time before memory. When you lift it, you feel its weight, the solidity of something made to last, and you trust it completely. Breakfast will come from this pot, from whatever was placed inside it hours ago. There is no special category of food designated for morning meals, no sense that certain things belong to certain times of day. You eat what is available, what can be prepared quickly, what will provide the energy you need for the hours ahead. The same foods that appear at breakfast will appear again at midday and in the evening, varied only by what the household has and what the season provides. Repetition is not boredom here. It is reliability, the comfort of knowing what to expect. The pot needs water before anything else can happen. You reach for the bucket that sits near the door, a wooden vessel worn smooth by years of use, its handle shaped by countless hands. It is light now, empty, ready to be filled. You lift it and step outside, the door opening onto a world that is still gathering itself into full morning. The air hits you immediately, cool and damp against skin that has grown warm by the fire. It carries the smell of earth and animals and the faint sweetness of grass wet with dew. The sky is pale grey, light enough to see clearly but not yet touched by the sun itself. You walk toward the well or the pump, following a path worn into the ground by countless trips, just like this one. Your feet know the way even if your mind wanders, placing themselves on the packed earth with the confidence of long practice. The well is a hole in the ground, lined with stone or wood, its depth hidden in darkness. A rope hangs from a beam above, tied to a bucket that waits at the top. You lower it carefully, feeling the rope run through your hands, listening for the splash that tells you it has reached water. The sound comes, muffled by depth, and you pull the rope up again, hand over hand, feeling the weight increase as the bucket rises. When it reaches the top, you swing it toward you, lifting it clear, and pour the water into your own bucket, with a sound that is satisfying and simple. The walk back is slower, the bucket heavier now, its weight pulling at your arm and shoulder. You carry it carefully, not wanting to spill any of the precious liquid inside. Every drop represents effort, the walking and the lowering and the raising, and you have learned not to waste. The water sloshes gently as you move, a small rhythm that accompanies your steps, and you listen to it without thinking. By the time you reach the door, your arm aches slightly, a familiar feeling that will fade as the day goes on. Back inside, you pour the water into the pot, hearing the change in sound as it meets the empty vessel and begins to fill. The level rises, covering the contents that have been waiting, and you know that soon they will soften and cook and become food. You pour carefully, leaving some in the bucket for other uses, for drinking or washing or whatever the day demands. Nothing is wasted, not the water and not the effort that brought it here. The pot returns to the fire, placed where the heat will reach it best. You watch it for a moment, seeing the first small bubbles form along its edges, knowing that the process has begun. Soon steam will rise, carrying the smell of whatever is inside, and that smell will spread through the room and call the household toward the meal. But for now there is only waiting. The slow work of fire and water transforming raw ingredients into something the body can use. The smell when it comes is familiar, so familiar that you might not notice it if you were not paying attention. It is the smell of corn, that most basic of foods, the grain that appears in some form at almost every meal. Cornmeal mixed with water, cooked slowly until it thickens into mush or porridge, depending on how much liquid is used. It is simple, almost plain, but it has its own character, its own subtle variations depending on the corn and the cooking and the fire. The smell is earthy and slightly sweet, with a hint of something deeper, something that comes from the grain itself and the ground it grew in. Sometimes there is salt to add, a precious commodity that transforms the plainness into something more. Salt comes from far away, evaporated from seawater, or mined from ancient deposits, carried over roads and rivers to reach this place. It is valued not just for its taste, but for its ability to preserve, to keep food through the seasons when fresh things are scarce. When you add it to the corn mush, you add it carefully. A small pinch that spreads through the pot and changes everything. The difference is subtle but real, the flatness of plain corn becoming something rounder, more complete. Milk is rarer, more precious, not something that appears at every meal. When it is available, it is usually saved for children, for those whose growing bodies need its richness most. Adults may go without, may eat their corn plain, or with water only, accepting that their needs are different. The taste of fresh milk, warm from the cow, is a memory that returns when you least expect it, a sweetness that stands out against the plainness of ordinary days. You do not expect it at breakfast. You do not expect it at all. When it comes, it is a gift, a small celebration woven into the ordinary fabric of the day. Sweetness of any kind is rare enough to be remarkable. Sugar comes from distant places, from islands where it is grown by people whose lives you cannot imagine, processed and shipped and sold at prices that most can barely afford. Honey is more local, gathered from hives kept by someone who knows the craft, but even it is precious, saved for special moments, or for times when sickness requires comfort. Molasses, darker and stronger, appears occasionally, its thickness and richness a reminder that sweetness comes in many forms. When sweetness does appear, it is remembered. You have heard stories told about a particular meal, a particular taste, a moment when honey or sugar transformed the ordinary into something extraordinary. These stories are passed down, told and retold, becoming part of the family memory. The taste itself fades, but the memory of it, the sense of occasion remains. It is a reminder that life is not only plainness, that moments of sweetness come even when you least expect them. The bread that accompanies the meal is from a baking days ago, perhaps even a week ago. It was made in quantity. Loaves formed and baked in the heat of the oven, then stored in ways that would keep it as long as possible. Now it is hard, the crust firm, the interior dense and dry. It is not the soft bread of fresh baking, not the yielding texture that makes each bite a pleasure, but it is bread still. Food that can be eaten, that will fill the stomach and provide energy for the work ahead. You tear it with your hands rather than cutting it. Knives are tools, not tableware, and they have their own uses that do not include slicing bread at every meal. The tearing is satisfying in its own way, a physical engagement with the food that reminds you where it came from. The crust resists, then gives. The interior fragments, and you hold the pieces in your hand ready to be eaten. Butter is spread thinly when it is used at all. It is made from milk that could have been drunk or sold, churned through hours of work, salted to preserve it through warm months. Each bit represents labour and resource, and so it is used carefully, a thin layer that adds flavour and fat without wasting either. The fat in butter is precious, carrying calories that your body craves after hours without food. You taste it when it is there, noticing the difference it makes, but you do not expect it. When the butter is absent, you eat the bread dry, accepting that this is how things are. You eat standing or sitting wherever there is space. There is no formal table in many homes, no place set aside specifically for meals. You find a spot near the fire where the warmth reaches you, or near a wall where you can lean, or simply stand in the middle of the room holding your bowl and your bread. Children eat quickly, already restless, their bodies demanding movement, even as they consume the fuel that will power it. Adults eat with purpose, aware that the work waits, that every moment spent eating is a moment not spent doing other things. The conversation during breakfast is minimal. The few words that need to be said about the day ahead, or the tasks that wait. Morning is not for reflection or discussion. It is for preparation, for gathering the energy and focus that the hours will require. You eat and you listen, and you think about what comes next, the sequence of tasks that will carry you through until the next meal. The bowl is scraped clean when you finish. Every bit of the corn mush eaten, nothing left to waste. Crumbs from the bread are gathered, saved for the animals, or for adding to something else later. The pot is left to soak, the water inside loosening the remnants, so they can be cleaned more easily later. Nothing pauses the day for long. The meal is over almost before it began. A brief interlude between the waking and the working. As you set aside your bowl, you feel the change in your body. The hunger that was sharp is now muted, the hollow place filled with warmth and substance. You are not full in the way that comes from indulgence, not satisfied in the way that follows pleasure. You are simply fed, provided with what you need to continue. The energy spreads slowly, evenly, without the rush that comes from sugar or the heaviness that comes from excess. It is a steady fuel measured to last, designed by experience to carry you through. The absence of choice stands out if you stop to think about it, but you do not stop to think about it. You do not ask what you want to eat, what you feel like having, what would taste good this morning. You accept what is there, what has been prepared, what the household provides. This acceptance is not resignation. It is simply how things are, how they have always been, how they will continue to be. Contentment here is quieter than the satisfaction of getting what you want. It is the deeper peace of knowing what to expect, of being part of a pattern that repeats and sustains. You think for a moment of mornings when there was no breakfast, when hunger stretched beyond the meal into the work itself. Those mornings are remembered, stored in the body as lessons about scarcity and survival. They make this morning, with its corn and its bread and its small portion of salt, feel almost abundant. Not abundant in the way of plenty, but abundant in the way of enough. Enough to work, enough to endure, enough to reach the next meal when it comes. The smell of corn lingers in the air, faint now, mixing with the smoke and the other smells of the household. It will fade as the day goes on, replaced by other scents, other reminders of the work that fills the hours. But for now it is there, a marker that breakfast has happened, that the day has properly begun. You carry its warmth with you as you turn from the fire, as you gather yourself for whatever comes next. The household is fully awake now, movement and sound filling the spaces that were quiet before. Children are sent on small errands, adults gather tools, the rhythm of the day asserts itself. You step into that rhythm without hesitation, carried by it as surely as the water was carried from the well. Breakfast has done its work. You are fed, not spoiled, and ready for the hours ahead. The fire burns behind you, the pot waits to be cleaned, the day opens before you like a path you have walked 1,000 times. You step forward, and the work begins. You push the door open, and step across the threshold, and the world meets you with sound before anything else. Not the sound of engines or machines, not the distant hum of a city that never sleeps, but something older and more layered, a tapestry of small noises woven together into the fabric of morning. Your boots meet the ground, and the sound is immediate. A dull thud against packed earth that has been walked on for years, decades perhaps longer than anyone can remember. The ground is firm but not hard, giving slightly under your weight, and the sound it makes is satisfying in its solidity. A confirmation that you are here, that the day has begun. A horse passes somewhere nearby, its hooves striking the road with a rhythm that is distinctive and unmistakable. The sound changes with the surface, hollow on wooden bridges, solid on packed earth, sharper where stones have been laid. You hear it approaching and fading. The pace steady, unhurried, the horse and its rider moving through the morning, with purpose that does not require speed. The hoofbeats carry, travelling through the air and through the ground itself, reaching you as both sound and vibration. From another direction comes the creak of wagon wheels, that particular sound of wood under stress, of weight shifting across an axle, that has made this journey thousands of times before. It is not a complaint exactly, more a conversation between the wood and the load it carries, a dialogue that changes with every rotation. You can tell by the sound how heavy the wagon is, how fast it is moving, whether the road is smooth or rough. The wheel finds a stone and the creak changes pitch, adjusts, continues on. It is a sound so familiar that you barely notice it, yet if it stopped you would feel the absence immediately. Metal strikes metal somewhere in the distance, a ringing sound that is clean and precise, cutting through the other noises like a bell. The blacksmith is already at work, starting his day before the sun has fully risen, his hammer finding iron that has been heating in the coals since before you woke. Each strike is purposeful, shaping something that will be used today or tomorrow or for years to come. The sound carries across the settlement, a signal that work has begun, that the day is moving forward whether you are ready or not. Voices reach you now, human sounds that are different from the others, because they carry meaning as well as presence. A greeting passes between two people somewhere out of sight, the words too distant to distinguish, but the tone clear enough, friendly and brief, the kind of exchange that happens 100 times a day without anyone thinking about it. There is no shouting here, no need to raise voices above the noise of traffic or machinery. The sounds are all human and scale, travelling without competition, finding ears without effort. The openness of it strikes you if you stop to think about it, the way sound moves through space without walls to block it. A conversation 50 yards away is audible, not as intrusion but as part of the environment. You hear your neighbours moving through their mornings, their footsteps and their words and their small sounds of living, and they hear yours. This is not something anyone comments on. It is simply how the world works, how communities exist, how people remain connected, even when they cannot see one another. The greetings you exchange as you walk are brief and familiar. A nod, a word, a small gesture that acknowledges presence, without requiring explanation. You know these people, have known them for years, and the morning greeting is a ritual that reinforces connection without demanding attention. Good morning, John. Morning, Sarah. The words are simple, repeated daily, but they carry weight, a recognition that you share this place and this time and this life. Then there are the smells, layer upon layer of them, building a map of the world that your nose reads without conscious effort. The first thing you notice as you move away from the house is the fading of wood smoke, that constant companion of indoor life, replaced by something broader and more complex. The air itself has a smell cool and damp from the night, carrying the essence of earth and growing things. It is the smell of morning everywhere. The particular freshness that comes before the sun has burned away the dew. Beneath that is the smell of the ground itself, that rich organic scent of soil and decay and life, all mixed together. It is not a clean smell in the modern sense, not sterile or artificial. It is the smell of things growing and dying and returning to the earth, the eternal cycle that supports everything. You have known this smell all your life, and it is as familiar as your own breath, as comforting as the fire that waits back home. Animals have left their mark everywhere, and the smell of their presence is constant. Manure is part of the landscape, not something to be avoided or complained about, but simply accepted, dealt with, used. It has its own smell, strong but not unpleasant when you are used to it. Earthy in a different way than the soil itself. Chickens scratch and leave their droppings behind. Pigs root and deposit their own contributions. Horses and cattle add to the accumulation. It all blends together into a background scent that defines the place as much as anything visual. As you walk further, the smells begin to differentiate themselves, marking different areas of the settlement. Near the workshops, the air carries the sharpness of metal and the oiliness of leather, the particular tang of things being made and repaired. Near the homes, it is softer, dominated by smoke and cooking and the small signs of domestic life. Near the fields, it opens up again, the green smell of growing things, the sweetness of hay and the earthiness of crops. Your nose knows where you are without needing your eyes to confirm it. A chicken erupts from somewhere near your feet, startled by your approach, and the sound of its flight is all feathers and alarm. Others join in, a small chaos of squawks and flapping that settles as quickly as it began. You watch them scatter, their jerky movements carrying them away from you, and then they resume their scratching and pecking as if nothing happened. They are part of the landscape, as common as the dirt beneath your feet, and their presence is so familiar that you would miss it if they were gone. A pig lies in the shade of a building, barely acknowledging your passage. It grunts once, a sound of profound indifference, and returns to whatever porcine thoughts occupy its mind. Pigs are like that, unconcerned with human affairs, living their own lives alongside yours without much interaction. They will be fed later, will root and wallow and grow, and eventually they will become meat. But for now they are simply there, another presence in the shared space. The whole settlement is like this, a huinda of species and purposes, animals and humans occupying the same ground, without much separation. Chickens wander into houses, if doors are left open. Dogs sleep in the middle of paths. Cats hunt mice in the same barns where cows are milked. The boundaries between human space and animal space are porous, constantly negotiated, never fixed. It is not something anyone thinks about. It is simply how life works when you live close to the land. The manure that accumulates everywhere is not ignored but managed. It is swept from doorways, collected from yards, piled in places where it can decompose and eventually be spread on fields. It is not waste in the sense of something useless. It is resource, fertility, the means by which the soil is renewed and crops are grown. The smell of it is the smell of life continuing, of nutrients cycling, of the fundamental processes that keep everyone alive. As you walk, you notice how everyone moves with purpose. There is no one standing idle, no one wandering without direction. Even the smallest children carry something, a message to deliver, a small tool, a basket of something gathered. Their legs are short and their steps are quick, trying to keep up with the longer strides of adults, but they move with the same intention, the same sense that there is somewhere to go and something to do. The rhythm of walking here is different from what you might imagine if you have only known modern life. It is not rushed, not driven by the need to arrive by a specific minute, but it is not slow either, not leisurely in the way of a stroll taken for pleasure. It is the pace of necessity, the speed that covers ground efficiently without wasting energy, that arrives when arrival is needed without demanding more of the body than it can give. You watch people move and you see this rhythm in every step, learned through years of practice, as natural as breathing. The way people carry themselves reveals their purpose. A farmer heading to the fields moves differently from a craftsman going to his shop, differently still from a woman taking goods to market. The body shapes itself to the task ahead, preparing muscles and posture for what is to come. You can tell by looking what someone will do today, what kind of work their hands will perform, what weight they will carry. It is a language written in movement, readable by anyone who knows how to look. Children imitate this even as they learn it, their bodies still finding the forms that will eventually become natural. They walk like their parents, gesture like their neighbours, carry themselves with the same purpose even when the purpose is only to deliver a small item or carry a message. They are learning the rhythm of the day, the pace of life, the way movement fits into the larger pattern of work and rest. By the time they are grown, it will be as automatic as breathing. The houses you pass are open to view, doors standing ajar, windows uncovered. There is no expectation of privacy in the modern sense, no assumption that what happens inside should be hidden from outside. People can see into your home as they pass, and you can see into theirs. And this visibility is not experienced as intrusion. It is simply how things are, how communities function, how people remain connected to one another's lives. Voices carry freely through these openings, and you hear fragments of conversation as you walk, snatches of domestic life that blend into the soundscape without demanding attention. A mother speaking to a child, a husband and wife discussing something mundane, the small sounds of people living their lives. None of it feels private in the way later centuries would understand. It is all part of the shared experience, the communal existence that defines this place. A stranger would stand out immediately here, not because of how they look, but because of how they move, how they are greeted, how they are placed in the social landscape. Everyone knows everyone, has known them for years, shares history and connection that makes recognition automatic. A new face is an event noticed and noted, discussed and placed. The community is a network of familiarity, woven so tightly that there are no gaps where anonymity can hide. As you continue walking, you become aware of the collective rhythm, the way everyone moves to the same pulse without needing to coordinate. The day has begun, and everyone is part of its beginning, rising and working and moving in patterns that repeat daily, seasonally, yearly. There is no one rushing, because rushing would disrupt the rhythm, would demand more than the body can give over the long hours. There is no one lingering, because lingering would mean tasks undone, would accumulate into problems later. The rhythm is set by forces larger than any individual, by the sun and the season and the needs of the land. Everyone adjusts to it, fits themselves into it, becomes part of it without conscious effort. The morning is the template, the pattern that the rest of the day will follow. The same tasks that happened today happened yesterday and will happen tomorrow, varied only by the small differences that keep life from becoming completely repetitive. You feel yourself falling into this rhythm as you walk, your steps matching the collective pace, your movements finding the same efficiency that everyone else's have found. It is not something you choose. It is something you absorb, growing up in this place, living this life, becoming part of the pattern before you are old enough to question it. The rhythm carries you forward, carries everyone forward, carrying the whole community through another day. The sun is higher now, the light stronger, the morning moving toward the full demands of the day. You have places to go, tasks to begin, work that waits for your hands. The sounds continue around you. The smells shift and change. The animals go about their own lives alongside yours. You are part of it all, woven into the fabric of this ordinary morning, this ordinary day in this ordinary life. And as you walk, you carry with you the quiet awareness that this is how it has always been, how it will always be, the steady rhythm of existence continuing through all the small changes that make each day distinct. A neighbour nods as you pass, a brief greeting exchanged without slowing. The horses continue their steady pace. The blacksmith's hammer rings out. The chickens scratch and cluck. The world of E10C by Joshua America moves forward around you, through you, carrying you with it into whatever the day will bring. You are part of its rhythm now, as you have always been, as you will always be, and the morning stretches ahead like a path you have walked 1,000 times before. The tools wait where you left them yesterday, leaning against the wall or hanging from pegs driven into the wood. Your hand reaches for one before your mind has fully decided which you need, the choice made by the body's memory rather than conscious thought. The handle meets your palm, and it fits, not because it was made for your hand specifically, but because your hand has held it so many times that the wood has shaped itself to your grip. Years of use have worn smooth places where your fingers wrap, have darkened where sweat and oil have soaked into the grain. The tool is an extension of you now, as familiar as your own limbs, as reliable as the breath in your lungs. You test its weight, feeling the balance that you know so well. A good tool has a centre, a place where it wants to be held, and your hand finds that place without searching. The head of the axe, The blade of the hoe, the tines of the rake, each has its own character, its own way of moving through the world. You have learnt them all, not through instruction but through use, through thousands of swings and cuts and lifts that taught your muscles what the mind could not explain. Choosing the wrong tool is a mistake you learn quickly, usually through the sharp lesson of wasted effort. A hoe that is too light will not bite deep enough into the soil, requiring extra passes that exhaust you before the work is done. An axe that is too heavy will tire your arms before the wood is cut, leaving you with a pile of logs and a body that can barely lift them. The right tool does not make the work easy. Nothing makes the work easy, but it makes the work possible, sustainable, something you can continue hour after hour without destroying yourself. Each tool has its purpose and its limit. The scythe cuts hay but cannot fell trees. The sickle harvests grain but cannot clear brush. The shovel moves earth but cannot split wood. You know these boundaries as well as you know your own, have internalized them through seasons of use, until they are as natural as the knowledge that fire burns and water wets. To use a tool beyond its purpose is to break it, to waste it, to lose something that cannot be easily replaced. When you step into the fields, the ground greets you with its own demands. You bend and touch the soil, feeling its moisture, its texture, its temperature. This is not a gesture of contemplation, but of necessity. The soil tells you what it needs, what it can give, when it is ready to receive your labour. Too wet, and you will damage its structure, compacting it into something hard and unyielding. Too dry, and the seeds will not germinate, the plants will not root, the work will be for nothing. Your fingers read the earth like a language, translating its condition into action. The field waits for you, patient and implacable. It does not care that you are tired, or that yesterday was long, or that your body aches in places that have ached for years. It waits because it has no choice. But its waiting is not passive. It is a demand, a requirement that must be met if you and your family are to eat through the coming months. The field does not forgive neglect. It does not make exceptions for difficulty. It simply is, and you must meet it as it is, day after day, season after season. The crops speak their own language if you know how to listen. The corn tells you when it needs water by the curl of its leaves. The beans show you when they are ready to pick by the fullness of their pods. The squash spreads across the ground, its broad leaves shading the soil, telling you that it has claimed this space and will not share it willingly. You read these signs without thinking, your eyes moving across the plants as you work, noting what is healthy and what is struggling, what needs attention and what can wait. The animals have their own demands, their own rhythms that must be respected. The cows need milking morning and evening, their udders full and painful if you delay. The pigs need feeding, their grunts rising to a chorus as you approach with the slop bucket. The chickens need their grain and their water, their eggs gathered from nests, hidden in corners you thought you had checked. These are not tasks you can postpone or ignore. The animals do not understand waiting. They only know hunger and discomfort, and they make their feelings known in ways that are impossible to disregard. There is a rhythm to the work that you fall into without intending to, a pattern of movement and rest that your body finds on its own. The first hour is the hardest. Muscles protesting as they wake to the demands of the day. Old injuries make themselves known, stiff joints complaining, scars pulling as you stretch and bend. But as you continue, something shifts. The blood warms, the muscles loosen. The body remembers what it has done thousands of times before and accepts that it will do it again. The breath finds its own pace, matching the rhythm of the work. Inhale as you lift, exhale as you swing. It is not something you think about, not a technique you learned. It is simply how bodies work when they are doing what they were made to do, moving through space and time with purpose. The breath becomes a meditation, a steady pulse that carries you through the hours, marking the passage of time in a way that clocks cannot. Pain is a constant companion, but it is not the kind of pain that demands attention or sympathy. It is the familiar ache of muscles used, of joints stressed, of a body that has worked hard for years and will work hard again tomorrow. You know where each pain lives, have mapped them across your body like a geography of labour. The ache in your lower back from bending, the stiffness in your shoulders from lifting, the burning in your hands from gripping. They are not enemies to be defeated. They are simply there, part of the landscape of the body, accepted and accommodated. When the pain becomes sharp, becomes more than familiar ache, the body adjusts without being told. You shift your grip, change your stance, find a way to continue that, avoids the worst of it. These adjustments are unconscious, learned through years of small injuries and recoveries. The body's wisdom protecting itself from damage that would stop the work entirely. You do not notice you are doing it. You only know that somehow, despite everything, you continue. The craftsman at his bench knows a different kind of work, but the same relationship between body and task. The blacksmith shop greets you with heat before you even enter, a wall of warmth that intensifies as you step inside. The fire roars in its forge, fed by bellows that someone works with steady rhythm. The smith stands before it, his face lit by the glow, his arms moving in patterns so practiced they seem like dance. He reaches into the fire with tongs, pulling out a piece of iron that glows orange jan white, so bright it hurts to look at directly. The metal goes to the anvil and the hammer rises and falls, each strike precise, controlled, nothing wasted. The ringing fills the shop, a music that has accompanied human work for thousands of years. Between strikes he turns the piece, examining it, reading its response to his blows, the way a farmer reads soil. The metal talks to him in its own language, and he answers with the hammer, coaxing it into shape. The woodworker's shop smells different, of sawdust and resin, and the particular sweetness of fresh jan-cut timber. The wood waits in stacks, aged and dried, each piece known for its character, its grain, its hidden weaknesses. The plane slides across a board, peeling away thin curls that fall to the floor and accumulate like snow. The chisel bites into a joint, removing just enough, never too much. There is a patience to woodwork that is different from the urgency of the forge, a slowness that allows the material to reveal itself. Apprentices learn by watching, by doing, by making mistakes and being corrected. No one explains in words what could be explained. The knowledge passes from hand to hand, from eye to eye, absorbed through proximity and repetition. A boy watches his master for years before he is trusted to strike the iron himself. A girl learns the loom by sitting beside her mother, her small hands gradually finding the rhythm that will carry her through life. The teaching is in the doing, the learning in the repetition, until the skill becomes as natural as breathing. The workshops open before dawn, the craftsmen arriving while the world is still grey, lighting their fires and preparing their materials. There is no advantage in sleeping late, no reason to delay the start of work. The day's light is limited and the work is not. Every hour matters, every moment of good light is precious. By the time the sun is fully up, the hammer is already ringing, the plane already cutting, the work already underway. Speed and precision must be balanced in every trade. Too fast, and the work is crude, unusable, wasted, too slow, and the work never finishes. The orders never fill, the family never eats. The craftsman learns to find the pace that is both efficient and accurate, a rhythm that produces good work at a sustainable rate. It is not something that can be taught in words. It must be felt, learned through years of practice, until the body knows what the mind cannot calculate. Children move through this world of work, like smaller versions of the adults around them, their bodies already learning what they will need to know. A girl of 5 carries water from the well, her arms straining with the weight, her steps careful to avoid spilling. A boy of 6 gathers kindling, selecting pieces small enough to carry, dry enough to burn. These are not games or exercises. They are contributions, small but real part of the household's survival. When a child makes a mistake, the correction is immediate and direct. A dropped bucket means wasted water, and the child learns to hold more carefully. A forgotten chore means extra work for someone else, and the child learns to remember. The lessons are not gentle, but they are effective, teaching through consequence what words could not convey. There is no sense that childhood should be protected from these lessons. The lessons are childhood, the process by which children become adults who can survive. The measure of a child is not their age, but their capability. A small child who can reliably carry water is valued more than an older one who cannot be trusted with simple tasks. The abilities accumulate year by year, task by task, until one day the child is no longer a child, but an adult capable of all the work that adulthood requires. There is no ceremony marking this transition, no sudden change. It happens gradually, imperceptibly, until one day you realize that you are doing what your parents do, that the work is yours now, that you have become what you were always becoming. Children learn by watching and imitating, their eyes always on the adults around them. They see how a tool is held, how a task is approached, how the body moves through the work. Without instruction, they begin to copy, their small hands finding the same grips, their bodies adopting the same postures. The skills pass from generation to generation through this silent observation, this unconscious mimicry, as reliable as any formal teaching. What is praised in a child is reliability, the ability to do what is asked without needing to be watched or reminded. Creativity is not valued in the same way, not sought or encouraged. The work requires consistency, predictability, the confidence that tasks will be done correctly. A child who invents new ways of doing things is more likely to cause problems than solutions. The old ways work. They have worked for generations. There is no need to improve them, only to continue them, to pass them on unchanged. For some, the work is not a choice, but an imposition, not a contribution, but a demand. The enslaved man or woman moves through the same fields, uses the same tools, performs the same labour, but the meaning of that labour is completely different. They work not for themselves or their families, but for someone who owns them, who claims the right to their bodies and their time and the product of their hands. The work is the same, but it is not the same. Every movement carries the efficiency of enslaved labour is forced, extracted through threat and punishment, rather than growing naturally from need and desire. The bodies move quickly not because they want to, but because they must, because the consequences of slowing are too terrible to risk. The silence that surrounds them is not the comfortable silence of shared purpose, but the silence of imposed order, of words that cannot be spoken, of anger that cannot be expressed. The skills that enslaved people bring to their work are real, developed through years of practice, refined through necessity. A man who can coax crops from poor soil, a woman who can weave cloth finer than any in the county. These abilities have value that everyone recognizes. But the recognition does not change the conditions. The skills are used, exploited, taken, while the people who possess them remain property, remain unfree, remain at the mercy of those who claim ownership. The work of enslaved people is often the hardest, the most brutal, the most relentless. Clearing land, planting and harvesting in the burning sun. Labour that continues from before dawn until after dark with only the briefest pauses. Bodies are pushed to their limits and beyond, worked until they break, replaced when they can no longer function. The calculus is cold, economic, indifferent to the humanity of those being calculated. Yet even within this horror, life continues. People love, form families, create communities in the hours that are their own. They pass down knowledge, maintain traditions, preserve what can be preserved of who they are and where they came from. The work takes everything it can take, but it cannot take everything. Something remains, something that endures, that will outlast the system that tries to destroy it. As you work through the morning, your own labour a choice and a necessity intertwined. You are aware of these other workers, these other lives, though you may not think about them directly. They are part of the same landscape, the same economy, the same world that shapes your days. Their labour supports the life you live in ways that are invisible but fundamental, woven into the fabric of everything. The sun climbs higher and the work continues. Muscles warm, rhythm settles, the hours unfold. Your body does what it has always done, what it was made to do, finding its way through the demands of the day. The tools rest in your hands like old friends, familiar and reliable. The field gives back what you put into it, slowly, incompletely, but enough. The morning stretches toward noon, and you are still moving, still working, still part of the great rhythm that carries everyone through their days. It is not easy, but it is not complicated. It simply is. And you are. And the work goes on. The work of women begins before the day does, and continues after it ends, flowing through the hours in ways that have no clear boundaries, no moments that can be marked as completion. You see it in the movements of the women around you, the way they never seem to stop, the way even their pauses are filled with small tasks that would not be noticed if they were left undone. There is no beginning to this work because it never truly ends, only fades and returns, loops back on itself in patterns that repeat daily without variation. A woman stands at the fire stirring the pot that holds the morning meal, while also watching a child who wanders too close, while also calling out instructions to an older daughter, while also planning in her mind what must be done before noon. Her hands are busy with one thing, her eyes with another, her thoughts with a third. And this layering of attention is so natural that she does not notice she is doing it. It is simply how women work, how the household continues, how everything that needs doing gets done. The tasks overlap and interweave like threads in cloth. Preparing food leads to washing dishes, leads to fetching water, leads to tending children, leads to mending clothes, leads to starting the next meal. There is no moment when one thing is finished and another begins. They flow together, each growing out of the last, each leading to the next, forming a continuous stream of small necessities that together keep the household alive. Even sitting down is not truly rest. A woman who sits takes up mending, her hands finding needle and thread as naturally as breathing. Stitching close the tears that appear constantly in garments worn by hard-working bodies. The children play at her feet while she works, her eyes flicking to them occasionally, noting who needs correction, who needs comfort, who needs to be sent on some small errand. Her body is still, but her hands are not, her attention is not, her mind is not. There is no moment of true rest because the work does not permit it. Because the household depends on this constant attention, this endless labour that never announces itself as labour. The food that was prepared for breakfast is only the beginning. Even as the family eats, the woman is thinking about the next meal, about what must be done to ensure that when hunger returns, there will be something to satisfy it. The dough that will become the midday bread is mixed while the morning pot still simmers, set aside to rise in a warm place near the hearth. The vegetables that will accompany the evening meal are cleaned and cut, stored in cool water to keep them fresh. The meat that was hanging in the smokehouse is checked, turned, adjusted to ensure it cures properly. Preserving food is a constant preoccupation, a race against time that runs through every season. In summer, the garden produces more than can be eaten fresh, and the excess must be saved for winter when nothing grows. Beans are dried on racks in the sun, their green fading to brown, their moisture evaporating until they rattle in their pods. Corn is cut from the cob and spread on cloths, turned regularly to prevent mould, stored in sacks that hang from the rafters where mice cannot reach. Apples are sliced and strung on threads, hung near the fire to dry into chewy rings that will sweeten winter meals. Salt is rubbed into meat, drawing out moisture, creating an environment where spoilage cannot take hold. The salted pork and beef hang in the smokehouse, slowly transformed by the smoke that seeps through cracks, acquiring flavour and preservation together. Fish are split and salted, packed in barrels, their smell sharp and penetrating. Nothing that can be preserved is allowed to spoil. The work of summer and fall is the eating of winter, and every woman knows that her labour now determines whether her family will hunger later. Fats are collected and rendered, the precious grease that carries flavour and calories through the lean months. Bacon drippings are saved in crocks, used for cooking, for seasoning, for adding richness to dishes that would otherwise be plain. Butter is churned from milk, salted to keep it, stored in cool cellars where it will last as long as possible. The fat from butchered animals is carefully cut away, rendered into lard that will be used for pie crusts and frying and 100 other purposes. Nothing is wasted because waste is a luxury that cannot be afforded. The textile work continues alongside the food work, another thread in the endless weave. The loom stands in a corner of the room, its warp already strung, waiting for the moments when a woman can sit and throw the shuttle, building cloth row by row. The rhythm of the loom is distinctive, a clacking that marks time through the day, accompanying all the other sounds of household life. The shuttle passes, the beater presses, the cloth grows inch by inch, and in this slow accumulation, a garment is born that will cover someone for years. Mending is constant because wear is constant. The knees of breeches thin and tear, the elbows of coats wear through, the hems of skirts drag and fray. Needle and thread are always within reach, taken up in every spare moment. Stitching close the damage before it spreads. The thread itself is precious, saved from previous projects, wound carefully on spools or wrapped around pieces of card. Even the smallest pieces of fabric are kept sorted by size and quality, waiting to become patches or bindings or stuffing for something else. Spinning fills the moments when other work cannot be done. A woman walking to market carries her drop spindle, twisting fibres into thread as she goes. Sitting by the fire in the evening, her hands work the wool or flax, drawing out and twisting, creating the yarn that will become cloth. The movement is rhythmic, almost unconscious, allowing her mind to wander while her hands continue their work. In a day of walking and sitting and waiting, she can spin enough thread to make a substantial start on the next garment. The cleaning never ends because the dirt never stops. Dust blows in through every crack, settles on every surface, accumulates in corners no matter how often they are swept. The broom is made of twigs bound together, rough but effective, pushing the dust out the door where the wind can carry it away. But the wind also carries new dust, new dirt, new things that must be swept again tomorrow. The floors are swept daily, sometimes more often, and still they are never truly clean. Water is too precious for the kind of cleaning that later centuries would practice. Dishes are washed in a small amount of water, scrubbed with sand if necessary, rinsed minimally. Floors are wiped with damp cloths rather than flooded. Bodies are washed sparingly, the face and hands receiving attention while the rest waits for the occasional full bath that requires heating quantities of water. The standard of cleanliness is practical rather than absolute, enough to prevent sickness, enough to maintain dignity, but not enough to waste the resource that costs so much effort to obtain. The tools of cleaning are humble and homemade. Brooms from twigs, scrubbers from rushes, cloths from rags too worn for any other purpose. They are replaced when they fail, remade from whatever materials are at hand, their simplicity belying their importance. Without them, the household would quickly become uninhabitable, buried in its own detritus, overwhelmed by the constant accumulation of dirt and waste. Children are everywhere in this landscape of work, both helpers and responsibilities, contributors and dependents. A woman watches them while she works, her attention divided but never truly distracted. She knows where each child is, what each child is doing, whether they are safe or venturing into danger. This awareness is not conscious, not something she maintains by effort. It is simply part of how she exists in the world, a constant low-level attention that never switches off. The children learn by being near, by watching, by imitating. A daughter of 3 or 4 begins to help with small tasks, fetching this, holding that, learning the movements that will one day be her own. A son of the same age learns the work of the yard and the field, following his father or older brothers, absorbing the knowledge that will make him a man. The teaching is not separate from the work. It is the work itself, the work of raising children to be capable adults who can continue the cycle. Correction is immediate and direct. A child who disobeys, who fails to complete a task, who causes trouble through carelessness, is corrected on the spot. The correction may be sharp words or a quick slap, whatever is needed to impress the lesson. There is no sense that childhood should be protected from consequences. The consequences teach, and the child who learns them early is the child who survives. The emotional work of caring for children is perhaps the most draining, the most invisible. The comfort given to a frightened child, the patience shown to a difficult one, the endless answering of questions and soothing of fears. This work leaves no visible product, no cloth woven or food preserved. But it is as essential as any other, shaping the people who will carry the household into the future. The woman who does this work receives no recognition for it, expects none. It is simply what mothers do, what women do, what must be done. In all of this labour, in all of these endless overlapping tasks, there is something that rarely appears in official records, in the documents that historians later study to understand this time. The work of women is largely invisible in the written record, mentioned only in passing if at all. Account books list crops and livestock and tools, but not the hours of spinning and mending and preserving. Diaries written by men describe politics and weather, and travel but rarely the domestic labour that made their lives possible. Yet this invisible work is the foundation on which everything else rests. The man cannot work in the fields if no one prepares his food. The children cannot learn if no one tends them. The household cannot function if the endless small tasks are left undone. The woman who manages all of this is the true manager of the household economy, the one who knows how much flour remains and when it will need to be replenished, how long the soap will last and when more must be made, whether the fabric on hand is enough for the winter clothing that will soon be needed. This knowledge is recorded not in ledgers, but in memory, carried in women's heads from day to day, season to season. The woman knows that the salt is running low and must be bought at the next market. She knows that the youngest child has outgrown his shoes and new ones must be made or acquired. She knows that the winter squash in the cellar will last another 2 months if they are careful, that the dried beans will stretch through March, that the smoked meat must be rationed to make it last. This knowledge is the household's true wealth, more valuable than any coin. When a woman fails in this work, when illness or circumstance prevents her from carrying out her tasks, the household feels it immediately. Meals are late or inadequate. Children go untended. Clothes go unmended. The smooth functioning of daily life stutters and breaks. The value of her labour becomes visible only in its absence, a negative space that reveals what was always there but never acknowledged. Yet she does not seek acknowledgement. She does her work because it must be done, because the people she loves depend on it, because this is what her mother did and her grandmother before her. The work is not a choice but a fact, as natural as breathing, as unavoidable as the passage of time. She does it day after day, year after year, through pregnancy and sickness and exhaustion, through joy and sorrow and the ordinary unfolding of life. When evening comes and the family gathers by the fire, her work continues. She sits with her mending or her spinning, her hands still moving, her attention still divided. The children settle around her, their heads in her lap, their small bodies warm against her. She strokes a forehead, adjusts a blanket, continues her work. The fire crackles, the room grows quiet, the day winds toward its close. But even then, even in the stillness, her mind is already moving toward tomorrow, toward the dough that must be mixed, the water that must be fetched, the endless round of tasks that will begin again with the light. This is the life of women in this time, in this place. It is not celebrated or commemorated. It simply is, as constant as the seasons, as reliable as the sunrise. And in its constancy, in its endless repetition, it holds everything else together. The invisible foundation on which the visible world is built. The path to the market is not a special journey, not a departure from ordinary life into something separate and distinct. It is simply the path you walk anyway. The road that connects homes and fields and workplaces, and the market exists along it like a widening of the stream you carry, with you whatever you have to trade, eggs in a basket wrapped carefully to prevent breaking, a small sack of grain, perhaps a piece of cloth or a tool you have made. The weight of it is familiar against your hip or balanced on your head, and you adjust to it without thinking as you walk. Along the way you pass others heading in the same direction or returning from it, and the greetings you exchange carry an extra weight today. Everyone is going to market or coming from it, and the knowledge of what might be available, what prices might be, what news might be circulating, passes in brief exchanges. A woman mentions that the tanner has good leather this week. A man says, the miller is paying less for grain than last month. These fragments of information accumulate as you walk, shaping your expectations, preparing you for what you will find. The market, when you reach it, is not a building or even a defined space. It is simply an area where people gather, where goods are displayed on blankets or in baskets or barrels, where transactions happen in the open air. There are no counters, no shelves, no glass cases separating you from what you might buy. The goods are there, within reach, waiting to be touched and examined and smelled. A basket of apples sits on the ground, their skins gleaming with the polish of a cloth. A pile of wool cloth is spread on a blanket, its colours muted but rich. Barrels of nails and salt and other dry goods stand in rows, their contents accessible to any hand. The difference between this and what you have heard of shops in larger places is fundamental. In a shop, the goods are behind a counter, controlled by a merchant who mediates between you and what you want. Here, you can pick up the apple, feel its firmness, smell its ripeness. You can rub the wool between your fingers, testing its softness, its warmth. The seller watches but does not intervene, knowing that this contact is part of the transaction, that you must know what you are buying before you commit. You know, most of the people here have known them for years. The woman selling eggs is your neighbour's sister. The man with the grain is your cousin's husband. The boy running messages is the son of a friend. This familiarity is not incidental to the market, but essential to it. When you buy from someone you know, you buy with confidence. You know how they work, how they treat their animals, how they measure their goods. The reputation that follows them through the community is worth more than any guarantee a stranger could offer. This trust is built slowly, transaction by transaction, year by year. A person who shortchanges a customer, who gives short weight or passes off inferior goods, loses not just that sale, but something far more valuable. Word spreads through the market, through the community, carried in the conversations that flow alongside the trade. Soon everyone knows that this person cannot be trusted, and their goods sit unsold while others trade among themselves. The loss of reputation is a loss of livelihood, a punishment more effective than any law. The skills of measuring are themselves a kind of knowledge passed down and practiced until they become instinct. A merchant lifts a sack of grain, feels its weight, and knows within a small margin how much it contains. A buyer looks at a piece of cloth, runs it through his hands, and knows its quality, its durability, its fair price. These judgments are made quickly, confidently, without the need for instruments or calculations. The eye and the hand are the tools, trained by years of use to accuracy that surprises those who have never learned it. When money changes hands, it is not the clean, uniform currency of later times. Coins are worn, their edges smooth, their inscriptions barely legible. They come from many places, bear many faces, represent many different values. Spanish silver dollars are common, their weight and purity trusted, often cut into pieces to make smaller denominations. British coins appear less frequently, their value known but their availability limited. Local tokens and private issues circulate in some places, their acceptance dependent on trust in whoever issued them. A coin's value is not determined by what is stamped on it, but by what it weighs. You have seen people test coins on small scales, balancing them against known weights, confirming that they contain the silver or gold they should. More often, the test is simpler, a quick bite that leaves small marks in the soft metal. The teeth feel the give, the resistance, the subtle difference between pure silver and base metal coated to look like silver. This is not suspicion but prudence, a habit so common that no one remarks on it. Cash is saved for specific purposes, for payments that must be made in money rather than goods. Taxes are one such purpose, the demands of government that cannot be satisfied with eggs or cloth. Large purchases, land or livestock or expensive goods from distant places may also require cash. For the ordinary transactions of daily life, money is avoided when possible, saved for when it cannot be avoided. The coins that pass through your hands are quickly spent or quickly saved, never lingering long in any one place. Most exchanges do not involve money at all. They are recorded in memory, in the small notebooks that some keep, in the ledgers that merchants maintain. You take eggs from your neighbour, and he takes grain from you, and both of you remember who owes what, at harvest time, or when accounts are settled, the balance is paid. This system works because you will see each other again, because the community is small enough that debts cannot be escaped, because everyone knows that a person who does not pay becomes a person with whom no one will trade. The language of credit is everywhere, woven into the fabric of every transaction. Put it on my account, you say, and the seller nods, making a mental note or a small mark in a book. I will settle after the harvest, you promise, and the promise is accepted because your word is known, because you have kept such promises before. The whole economy rests on these small commitments, these daily acts of trust that bind community together. When a debt cannot be paid, when harvest fails or sickness strikes, the community adjusts. The debt may be extended, reduced, sometimes even forgiven, but the person who owes carries the weight of it, the knowledge that they have not kept their word, that others have waited because of them. This weight is social as well as economic, a burden that affects how they are seen, how they are treated, how they move through the community. As you conduct your business, you are also absorbing information, the constant flow of news that accompanies every transaction. A woman mentions that her sister is ill, and you store this knowledge, perhaps planning to visit or send help. A man speaks of a traveller who passed through, bringing news from the coast, from the cities, from places you will never see. A boy reports that the bridge on the North Road is damaged, information that will affect anyone planning to travel that way. The market is the place where news gathers, where it is exchanged along with goods, where it spreads through the community like ripples in a pond. What one person knows soon becomes what everyone knows, passed from seller to buyer, from neighbour to neighbour, until the whole settlement shares the same information. This is how you learn of births and deaths, of marriages and disputes, of prices in distant towns and weather in places you will never visit. Health information is particularly valued, passed carefully, remembered precisely. A remedy that worked for someone's cow, a treatment that helped a child's fever, a warning about bad water or spoiled food. These fragments of medical knowledge circulate constantly, added to by each person's experience, tested by each person's use. The woman who knows which herbs ease a cough, the man who knows how to set a broken bone. These people are known and sought out, their knowledge a kind of currency as valuable as any coin. The weather is always a topic, discussed and analysed and predicted. Someone has noticed that the birds are flying low, suggesting rain. Another has felt a change in the wind, a shift that might bring cold. These observations are shared freely, their value obvious to everyone whose livelihood depends on what the sky does. A storm that catches you unprepared can destroy a crop-soaked hay, make roads impassable. The more warning you have, the better you can prepare. As the morning advances toward noon, the market begins to thin. Those who came early have done their business and are heading home. Those who came later are finishing their transactions, making their last bargains, preparing for the walk back. The goods that remain are packed up, loaded onto carts or into baskets, carried away to be stored until the next market day. The conversations wind down, the greetings become farewells, the space slowly empties. You gather your own purchases, the things you have acquired in exchange for what you brought. A new knife, its blade sharp and bright salt for the winter preserving, a length of ribbon for a daughter, a small luxury that will delight her out of all proportion to its cost. These things go into your basket, into your pack, carried home with the same care you used bringing your goods to market. The walk home is different from the walk there. Your burdens have changed, lighter perhaps or heavier. But the real difference is in what you carry in your mind. News to share, prices to remember, faces and words, and small moments that will be discussed around the fire tonight. The market has done its work, not just moving goods but connecting people, binding the community together through the endless small exchanges that keep everyone alive. You pass others on the road, some heading toward the market even now, late but still hoping to trade. You exchange greetings, brief words about what they will find, what prices are being offered, who is still there. The information flows even now, even after the market has ended, spreading along the roads and paths until everyone knows what happened today, what was available, what the news is. By the time you reach home, the sun has passed its height and begun its slow descent toward afternoon. The day is far from over, the work still waiting, but the market is done, the trading finished, the connections renewed. You put away your purchases, share the news you have gathered, and turn to whatever task comes next. The market fades into memory, into the fabric of daily life, until next week when you will walk that road again, carrying new goods, seeking new exchanges, once more part of the endless flow of trade that sustains this world. The food that appears at midday comes from somewhere, has a history that reaches back through the morning and beyond. It may be what was left from breakfast, kept warm by the fire, or set aside in a covered pot. It may be what was prepared yesterday, and saved for this moment, the evening meal transformed into midday fuel. It may be something begun at dawn and finished now, the slow work of fire and water finally complete. Whatever it is, it arrives not as a surprise, but as continuation, another step in the endless cycle of feeding that sustains the household. The season determines what is available more surely than any plan or preference. In summer, the meal may include fresh vegetables pulled from the garden hours ago, their taste still sharp with the earth they grew in. In winter, it will be drawn from stores, from the careful work of preservation that occupied so many days when the weather was warm. The dried beans that have been soaking since last night, the salt meat that hangs in the smokehouse, the root vegetables that have waited in the dark coolness of the cellar. Each bite carries the memory of another season, another time, another kind of work. Preservation transforms food in ways that become familiar, expected. The salt that permeates meat changes its texture, its taste, its very nature. The smoke that clings to fish and flesh adds a layer of flavour that you would miss if it were absent. The drying that concentrates apples and beans and corn creates something new from something old, a different kind of food that has its own place in the order of meals. You do not think of these preserved foods as inferior to fresh. They are simply what is available, what sustains, what has always been eaten in the seasons, when nothing new grows. Sometimes there is an EY, a small gift from the world that adds something unexpected to the meal. A child finds berries while playing and brings them home in a cupped shirt. A hunter appears with a bird dressed and ready, shared among neighbours. A cow gives more milk than expected, and there is fresh cheese for everyone. These moments are not relied upon, not planned for, but when they come, they are celebrated in the quiet way that suits this life. A small extra pleasure woven into the ordinary. You eat where you are, not where a table waits. If you are in the fields, you find a spot in the shade, a stone or a fallen log to lean against, and you eat there with the work spread out around you. If you are near the house, you may come inside, standing by the fire or sitting on a bench, but the meal is brief and you do not settle. The body knows that rest is limited, that the work waits, that this pause is only a pause. Bread serves purposes beyond itself. A piece torn from the loaf becomes a tool, a way to scoop food from the bowl, to soak up the last of the broth, to carry fat or sauce to your mouth. The bread absorbs, holds, delivers, and then becomes part of the meal itself. Your fingers learn to use it without thinking, to shape it to the task, to extract every bit of goodness from what you have been given. The fat that clings to the bread, that floats in the broth, that coats the vegetables, is not incidental but essential. It carries calories, in concentrated form, the energy your body craves after hours of labour. You taste it and your body responds, recognizing what it needs, what will carry it through the afternoon. The salt that seasons everything is there for the same reason, not just for taste, but for the body's requirements. The minerals lost in sweat that must be replaced. Salt is so universal that you barely notice it, yet its absence would be immediately felt. It is in the meat and the bread, in the vegetables and the broth, a constant presence that defines the flavour of almost everything. You have heard that in some places people complain of too much salt, but here it is simply how food tastes, how it has always tasted, how it will continue to taste as long as there is meat to preserve and grain to season. For drinking, there is cider or small beer, the fermented drinks that accompany most meals. They are made from what is available, apples pressed in the fall and left to work their transformation, grain boiled and fermented into something that keeps. The alcohol content is low, barely enough to notice, but the fermentation serves a purpose beyond itself. It makes the drink safe, kills the things in water that cause sickness, provides liquid that will not harm you, even when the water from the well cannot be trusted. Water is drunk when it must be, when there is no alternative, but always with awareness, with caution. You know which sources are safe, which have a history of sickness attached to them. You know that water from a fast and moving stream is better than water from a still pool. That water from a deep well is better than water from a shallow one. These judgments are not scientific, but they are effective, learned through generations of experience, through the hard lessons of those who drank from the wrong place and paid for it with their health. The fermented drinks are part of every meal, consumed by children as well as adults, their mildness making them suitable for all. A child drinks diluted cider and receives hydration without risk. An adult drinks small beer and feels the small comfort of something that tastes of grain and fermentation, of the work that went into making it. The jug is passed around, refilled, passed again, until the meal is done and everyone has had enough. When the meal ends, you feel it in your body, a shift from hunger to satisfaction that is gradual rather than sudden. The emptiness that was there before is gone, replaced by a steadiness, a sufficiency that will carry you through the hours until evening. There is no heaviness, no drowsiness, none of the lethargy that comes from overeating. The fuel has been added, but the engine continues, the body ready for whatever comes next. The energy spreads evenly, without peaks and valleys. There is no sugar to spike and crash, no refined anything to trick the body into false signals. What you have eaten is what you have always eaten, what your body knows how to use, and it moves through you like water through a stream, steady and reliable. You feel capable rather than full, ready rather than satisfied. Nothing that remains is wasted. The scraps from the meal are gathered, the bones that still hold flavour, the bits of bread too small to bother with, the last spoonfuls in the bottom of the pot. They go to the animals, to the chickens that scratch and peck, to the pig that will eat anything, to the dog that waits patiently for whatever falls. Nothing is thrown away because nothing is worthless, because the line between food and waste is not a line at all, but a continuum, a cycle that includes everything. The pot is scraped clean, wiped with a piece of bread that becomes part of someone's meal. The bowls are stacked, the spoons set aside, the evidence of eating erased in preparation for the next time. The fire is adjusted, the tools gathered, the body turned back toward the work that waits. There is no transition between eating and working, no pause that separates one from the other. The meal ends and the work resumes, as natural as breathing out after breathing in. You stand, stretch, feel the food settled inside you. The afternoon stretches ahead, full of tasks and movements, of hours that will pass as hours always do. The meal has done its work, provided what was needed, and now you will do yours. You step back into the rhythm, into the fields or the shop, or the endless round of household tasks, carrying with you the quiet satisfaction of having been fed, of being ready, of continuing on through another ordinary day. The need for water does not end with the morning tasks. It returns throughout the day, a constant presence at the edge of awareness, demanding attention at intervals that feel irregular, but are actually determined by the work itself. You feel the dryness in your mouth, the heaviness in your body, and you know that water must be fetched again, that the bucket will have to make another journey from the well to the house. There is no tap here, no water that arrives through pipes without effort. Every drop that you use must be carried, must be lifted and transported and poured, and each of these actions costs something in the currency of your body's strength. The walk to the well is familiar, your feet finding the path without guidance. The bucket swings at your side, empty now but soon to be heavy. You pass others on the same errand, a nod exchanged, a brief word about the weather or the work. The well is a gathering place as much as a source, a point where paths cross and news is shared. You wait your turn if others are there, lowering your bucket when the rope is free, listening for the splash that tells you it has reached water. Then the pull upward, hand over hand, the weight increasing as the bucket rises, until you can swing it clear and start the walk back. The water you bring is used selectively, prioritized for what matters most. Hands are washed before meals and after dirty work. the water catching the grime that accumulates through the day. Faces are splashed in the morning and evening, a quick refreshment that uses little. But full bathing is rare, an event rather than a routine, because heating water requires fuel, and fuel requires labour. A kettle on the fire consumes wood that was cut and carried, and the time spent heating water is time that could be spent on other things, so you wash what must be washed and leave the rest. Accepting that perfect cleanliness is not possible and not expected. The household's waste is managed close at hand, a constant small negotiation with the products of living. The chamber pot sits in its corner, used during the night when going outside is too cold or too far. In the morning it is emptied, carried to the privy or to a designated area away from the house and the well. The process is routine, unremarkable, part of the daily round that no one comments on. The contents join the larger accumulation of waste that surrounds every settlement, dealt with by time and weather and the slow work of decomposition. The privy itself is a small structure, simple and functional, placed where it will not contaminate the water supply. The understanding of how disease spreads is not scientific, but it is effective, learned through generations of experience with sickness that followed contamination. The privy is downstream or downslope from the well, far enough that what goes into it will not come back into the house. Its smell is present, but not overwhelming. A fact of life like so many others. Elsewhere, waste is managed differently. The animals contribute constantly, their droppings scattered across yards and paths, and these are left where they fall or gathered for the compost heap. Manure is not waste in the sense of uselessness. It is fertilizer, fuel for the crops, part of the cycle that keeps the land productive. You step around it without thinking, avoiding the fresh piles while recognizing that they will eventually enrich the soil. The smell of a place tells you things about its health. A privy that smells too strongly, that spreads its odour beyond its immediate area, may be leaking or overflowing and needs attention. An animal that smells different than usual may be sick. A person whose breath or skin carries an unusual odour may be carrying illness. These signs are read unconsciously, part of the constant assessment that keeps you aware of the world around you. Laundry is a day unto itself, an event that arrives at intervals determined by weather and need. When the day comes, everything stops for it. The household reorganizing around the demands of washing. Water must be heated in quantities that dwarf the usual needs. Kettles and pots pressed into service. Fires built up to produce the necessary heat. The water is poured into tubs, mixed with cold to reach the right temperature, and the work begins. The clothes are soaked, rubbed, beaten against stones or washboards, the dirt forced out of the fibres by physical effort. Your hands work through pile after pile, the water gradually darkening with the accumulated grime of days or weeks. The same water is used for multiple loads, starting with the least dirty and progressing to the most, extracting every bit of usefulness before it is finally thrown away. The work is hard on the body, bending and lifting and rubbing, and by the end of the day you are as tired as after any other labour. When the washing is done, the drying begins. And this is where weather asserts its authority. A sunny day with a breeze is perfect, the clothes drying quickly and smelling fresh when they are gathered. A damp day stretches the process, the clothes hanging for hours without fully drying, acquiring a musty smell that will cling to them until they are worn. A rainy day forces the laundry indoors, the clothes draped on every available surface, steaming gently and filling the house with moisture and the particular smell of wet fabric. Wool, when wet, has a smell all its own, strong and unmistakable, the scent of damp animal rising from garments that were once part of a sheep. You have known this smell all your life, and it carries no particular meaning for you beyond the simple fact that the wool is wet. But a visitor from elsewhere might notice it, might comment on it, might find it strange. To you, it is simply how things smell when they are drying, as familiar as the smell of bread or smoke. The body gives signals that must be watched, small changes that may be the beginning of something larger. A heaviness in the limbs that does not come from work, a warmth in the skin that is not from the fire, a loss of appetite, a headache, a vague sense that something is wrong. These signs are noted, filed away, watched for what they might become. The body is a landscape that you know intimately, and any change in its familiar terrain is cause for attention. When illness comes, it is met at home. There are no hospitals here, no places where sick people gather to be treated by strangers. The sick bed is in the same room where the sick person has always slept, surrounded by the same faces, the same sounds, the same small routines of daily life. The family becomes the caregivers, the women especially taking on the work of nursing that is as demanding as any other labour. The knowledge of healing is carried in women's minds, passed from mother to daughter through generations. Which herbs ease a fever, which roots settle a stomach, which barks reduce inflammation. This knowledge is practical, tested by experience, refined by the outcomes of countless illnesses. It is not written down in books that everyone can consult. It lives in memory, in practice, in the small gestures of women who have learnt from their mothers and will teach their daughters. The theory behind treatment is one of balance, of cold and hot, wet and dry. A fever is too much heat, and must be cooled with cooling herbs and cool compresses. A chill is too much cold, and must be warmed with heating remedies and extra blankets. The body is understood as a system of forces that must be kept in equilibrium, and illness is what happens when the balance tips. The treatments aim to restore the balance, to bring the body back to its proper state. Doctors exist, but they are distant, expensive, not always trusted. A physician might be called for a serious illness, for a case that seems beyond the family's ability to manage. But the cost is high, in money and in the time it takes to send for someone and wait for their arrival. Often the illness has run its course, one way or another, before the doctor can even reach the bedside. So most treatment happens within the family, within the familiar routines of care that have always been there. The treatments that doctors bring are not always gentle. Bloodletting is common, the opening of a vein to release what is thought to be excess or corrupted blood. The logic is the same balance, the idea that too much blood causes certain illnesses and must be corrected. The patient may feel weaker afterward, but this is considered part of the cure, the body brought back into balance by the removal of what was harming it. Purging is another common treatment, the use of strong herbs to induce vomiting or diarrhea to expel whatever is causing the illness from the body. The experience is violent, exhausting, but it too is understood as part of the cure, the body cleansed of impurities. Whether these treatments actually help is a question that no one asks in the way you might ask it now. They are what doctors do, what has always been done, and when a patient recovers it is because the treatment worked. Children are most vulnerable, their small bodies less able to withstand the assaults of illness. A fever that would be uncomfortable for an adult can be deadly for a child. A cough that would pass in a few days can settle on a child's chest and become something worse. Parents watch their children with an attention that never fully relaxes, noting the rhythm of breathing, the temperature of skin, the presence or absence of appetite. These observations are constant, automatic, the background of every interaction. When a child falls ill, the watching intensifies. The mother barely sleeps, waking at every sound, checking and rechecking. The father takes on extra work, covering the tasks that the mother cannot leave. The other children are kept quiet, kept away, their normal noise suppressed in the sick room's presence. The whole household reorganizes around the sick child, everything else becoming secondary to the work of care. Fear is present, but not paralyzing. It has always been present, a constant companion in a world where children die. You have seen it happen, have buried children yourself, or helped to bury the children of others. The possibility is always there, a shadow at the edge of every fever, every cough, every unexplained lethargy. You do not let the fear control you because you cannot, because the work of care must continue, because giving in to fear would help no one. When death comes, it comes quietly often, a fading rather than a struggle. The child slips away despite everything, despite the herbs and the prayers and the watching. The grief that follows is deep, but it is also familiar, part of the pattern of life that includes loss, as well as gain. The child is buried, mourned, remembered, and life continues, as it must, because the living still need to be fed and clothed and cared for, because the work does not pause for grief. But most children survive. Most illnesses pass, most fevers break, and most coughs clear. The child who was sick returns to health, returns to play, returns to the small tasks that fill their days. The parents exhale, the household relaxes, the fear recedes until the next time. And the knowledge gained from this illness, from what worked and what did not, is added to the store that will be used when illness comes again, as it always will. As the afternoon moves toward its later hours, a different kind of presence begins to make itself felt, not loud or demanding but steady, woven into the fabric of ordinary life so completely that you might not notice it unless you stop to think. Faith is like that here, not something reserved for a particular day or a particular hour, but something that accompanies everything, that shapes the words people use and the pauses they make and the way they understand the world around them. You hear it in the phrases that punctuate ordinary speech, the small invocations that slip out without thought, the blessings asked and thanks given for things both great and small, God willing. Someone says when speaking of tomorrow's plans, the Lord provides. Another murmurs when a need is met. These words are not prayers exactly, not formal addresses to the divine, but they carry the weight of belief, the assumption that life unfolds within a larger order that is watching and caring, and sometimes intervening. The pause before a meal, the moment when heads bow and eyes close and silence falls over the table, is not a long one. It is a breath, a heartbeat, a small space carved from the day's demands. But in that space something is acknowledged, the dependence on forces beyond human control, the gratitude for what has been provided, the recognition that food does not appear by effort alone, but by the grace of something larger. The words spoken may be formal or may be silent, may be the same words that have been spoken for generations, or may be whatever comes to mind. What matters is the pause itself, the small ritual that marks this as more than just eating, as something connected to the order of things. The building where the community gathers for worship is not grand. It is simple, functional, built by the same hands that build barns and houses, using the same materials and the same skills. The benches are hard, the windows plain, the walls unadorned, except perhaps for the simplest of decorations. There is no art here meant to inspire awe, no architecture designed to lift the eye and the spirit toward heaven. The awe is meant to come from within, from the words spoken and the silence kept, from the knowledge that this space is set aside, even if it looks like every other space. The service, when it happens, is long, measured not by the clock, but by the needs of the congregation and the endurance of the preacher. Sermons stretch, exploring texts and ideas with a thoroughness that later ages would find excessive. But attention is expected, is demanded by the importance of what is being said. You listen not only for instruction, but for reassurance, for the confirmation that the hardships of life have meaning, that suffering is not random, but part of a pattern that will eventually make sense. The words wash over you, some landing, some passing, but the experience of listening itself is part of what matters. The act of being present with others who are also seeking, also waiting, also holding on to. When pain comes, when loss visits, when the world seems too heavy to bear, faith provides a framework for understanding. This suffering has purpose, even if that purpose is hidden. This death is not the end, even if what comes after is mysterious. This life is part of something larger, something that gives meaning to the small struggles and small joys that fill each day. The explanation does not remove the pain, but it makes it bearable, gives it a place in the order of things, allows you to continue when continuing seems impossible. The information that reaches you about the world beyond your immediate experience travels at walking speed, carried by feet and hooves, and the occasional wagon news from the next town is hours old when it arrives. News from the city is days old. News from far away, from places you will never see, is weeks or months old, so aged that it has become almost history before it reaches you. This is not a source of frustration because it has always been this way, because you have no expectation of immediacy, because the pace of news is the pace of life itself. Most of what you learn comes through voice, through the words of people you know telling you what they have heard from people they know. The chain of transmission is personal, each link a known face, a trusted source. When someone tells you something, You judge it not only by its content, but by who is speaking, by their reputation for accuracy, by their relationship to the events they describe. A story from a traveller passing through is treated differently from a story told by your neighbour's brother, who is actually there. The source matters as much as the information. Newspapers exist, but they are not common, not something that reaches every household or even every settlement. When one arrives, it is passed from hand to hand, read aloud to those who cannot read, discussed and debated and argued over until every drop of information has been extracted. The paper itself is valuable, saved for other uses when its news is old. The words printed on it carry weight partly because they are printed, because they have been fixed in a way that speech is not, but they are still subject to the same judgment, the same questioning of source and motive. Letters are treasures, handled with care, read and reread and saved. The paper they are written on is precious, the ink carefully applied, the words chosen to convey as much as possible in the limited space. When a letter arrives, the household gathers to hear it read, to share in the news from a distant son or daughter, a brother or sister, a friend who has moved away. The voice of the reader carries the absent person's words, brings them into the room, makes them present for a little while. Then the letter is folded and stored to be brought out again on quiet evenings, to be read again and remembered again. The politics of the larger world exist at the edges of daily life, present but not pressing, known but not constantly considered. You hear about debates in distant assemblies, about decisions made by people you will never meet, about conflicts that seem far removed from the fields and workshops where you spend your days. These things matter eventually when they affect the taxes you pay, or the goods you can buy, or the roads you travel. But in the moment, they are background, a distant hum that occasionally rises to notice. What makes politics real is not theory but impact. A new tax on goods you buy, a change in the rules for selling your crops, a regulation that makes it harder to trade with someone across a boundary. These things you feel directly in your pocket and in your daily choices. The ideas behind them, the grand principles and abstract arguments, may be discussed by those who have time and inclination for such things, but for most people it is the concrete effect that matters. A government that takes more of your harvest is a different thing than a government that protects your rights, even when they are the same government. The word freedom is spoken, but its meaning shifts depending on who is speaking and what they mean by it. For some, it means the right to make their own choices, to worship as they please, to speak without fear. For others, it means the ability to support themselves, to own land, to be independent of masters. For others, still it means something they have heard about but never experienced. A promise that seems always just out of reach. The word carries weight, but it does not carry a single meaning, and in its multiplicity lies both strength and confusion. Not everyone participates in politics equally. Some are deeply engaged, reading every pamphlet, attending every meeting, arguing every point. Others are content to let these matters pass over them, to focus on the immediate demands of survival, to trust that those who claim to represent them will do so adequately. The difference is not always a matter of interest or intelligence. It is often a matter of time, of energy, of the simple fact that a person who must work from dawn to dusk to feed a family has little left over for debating the fine points of constitutional interpretation. Change is viewed with caution, with suspicion even. The world as it is may be hard, but it is known, its patterns familiar, its dangers understood. Change brings uncertainty, risks that cannot be calculated, outcomes that cannot be predicted. When someone proposes something new, the first question is not whether it is good, but whether it is necessary, whether the old way has truly failed or whether it can be made to work a little longer. This conservatism is not political in the modern sense. It is survival. The accumulated wisdom of generations who learned that the new is not always better and that the old at least works. Declaring loyalty to one side or another carries risk that varies with place and circumstance. In some communities, opinions are freely expressed, differences tolerated, arguments conducted without lasting consequences. In others, a word spoken carelessly can lead to ostracism, to loss of trade, to threats against person and property. You learn to read the room, to know who can be trusted and who cannot, to hold your tongue when holding it is wiser than speaking. Even within families, opinions can differ. A father may support one cause, a son another, and the difference may be spoken or unspoken depending on the relationships and the risks. Letters hint at these divisions, the careful phrasing that avoids commitment, the topics that are simply not mentioned at the table. Conversation steers away from dangerous ground, settling on weather and work and the small events of daily life. The disagreement is there, known to all, but it is managed, contained, kept from disrupting the bonds that hold the family together. Silence can be a strategy, a way of surviving when speaking is dangerous. You watch others, see who speaks and who does not, who pays a price for their words and who prospers through their discretion. The lesson is learned early and remembered always. There are things you do not say, opinions you do not share, positions you do not take, not because you have no opinions, but because survival matters more than expression, because the cost of honesty can be too high. Neutrality has its own costs. To stand aside, to refuse to declare, is itself a declaration in the eyes of some. It says that you are not committed, that you cannot be relied upon, that your loyalty is to yourself alone. This judgment can be as damaging as taking the wrong side, can lead to the same isolation, the same loss of trust. There is no safe position, no place of perfect security. There is only the constant calculation, the weighing of risks and benefits, the choices made in the moment with incomplete information. Symbols that later generations will take for granted do not yet exist, or exist only in local and varied forms. A flag may mean something in one place and nothing in another. A phrase may inspire loyalty in some and suspicion in others. The absence of agreed symbols means that allegiance is expressed in smaller ways, in the company you keep, the goods you buy, the words you use. It is read from your life rather than from any sign you display. The year Fay places you in a particular moment, though you may not feel its particularity as you live through it. The nation that claims your allegiance is only 4 years old, a fragile experiment that might still fail, might still dissolve into the separate pieces from which it was assembled. The memory of the war is fresh, the sacrifices still felt, the questions about what it all meant still unresolved. Some fought, some fled, some waited to see which way the wind would blow. The divisions from those years remain healed in some places, festering in others. The constitution that now governs was recently ratified, its meaning still being discovered, its limits still being tested. The men who wrote it are known to you by name and reputation. Some admired, some distrusted, most simply distant figures whose decisions arrive as already accomplished facts. The government it created is taking shape, finding its way, learning what it means to be a government. The first Congress has met, the first laws have been passed, the first taxes have been levied. These events are known to you through the same slow channels as all news, arriving days or weeks after they happen, their significance debated long after the fact. The capital itself is temporary, moving from New York to Philadelphia, while a permanent city is planned and built somewhere in the south. You have heard of this new city, this Washington, but it exists mostly on paper, a vision of what might be wrong. The government operates out of borrowed buildings, rented rooms, spaces that were never designed for its purposes. There is something provisional about it all, something unfinished, that matches the mood of the nation itself. Alexander Hamilton, the Secretary of the Treasury, has plans that will reshape the economy, that will tie the states together through shared debt and shared interest. His ideas are discussed by those who follow such things, debated in newspapers and pamphlets, argued over in taverns and coffee houses. To you they may seem distant, abstract, the concerns of merchants and speculators rather than ordinary people, but eventually they will reach you in the taxes you pay and the prices you receive and the value of the money that passes through your hands. All of this, the grand events and the small, the distant decisions and the immediate consequences, flows together in the afternoon of this ordinary day. You are part of something larger than yourself, whether you think about it or not. The nation is being built around you, through you, by the choices you make and the work you do and the life you live. You may not feel its weight as you go about your tasks, but it is there, the context in which everything happens, the frame within which your days unfold. The sun continues its slow arc toward evening. The work continues, the conversations continue, the life of the household and the community continues. The news you have heard today will be discussed tonight. The opinions formed will be tested against others. The small judgments made will accumulate into the larger judgments that shape how you see the world. And through it all, through the talk of politics and faith and events far away, the ordinary rhythms persist, the tasks that must be done, the needs that must be met, the day that must be lived. That is where you are in this moment, in this place, in this year of Fae. Part of something new and old at once, carrying the past into a future that no one can yet see. The work of some is visible in ways that others is not, though both are essential to the life that continues around you. You see the man in the field, bent over the rows, his movements steady and unceasing. You see the woman at the loom, her hands working the shuttle back and forth, building cloth hour by hour. But what you do not see, what is not written anywhere, is the difference between work done for oneself and work done because one must, because one is owned by another and has no choice. The same tools, the same fields, the same movements of the body, but the meaning of it all is completely different, a difference that cannot be seen but is present in every gesture, every pause, every moment of the day. The enslaved man who works beside you in the field knows the feel of the soil as well as you do, knows when to plant and when to harvest, knows which crops thrive and which fail. His hands are as skilled as yours, his knowledge as deep. But the crop he tends will not feed his children. The cloth his wife weaves will not clothe her family. The product of their labour belongs to someone else, someone who claims the right to it by a law that no one questions, by a custom that has existed longer than anyone remembers. The skill is there, but the ownership is not, and that difference is everything. In the house, the distance between those who own and those who are owned is both present and absent, a contradiction that lives in every room. The enslaved woman, who tends the children, who cooks the meals, who cleans the floors, is intimate with every aspect of family life. She knows the children's fears and hopes, the parents' arguments and reconciliations, the small secrets that every household contains. She is present for all of it, yet she is not part of it. There is a line that cannot be crossed, a boundary maintained by silence and custom and the ever-present threat of violence. She is close enough to touch, but never close enough to belong. The language of command is spare, direct, stripped of the politeness that marks other exchanges. Do this, go there, bring that. No explanation is offered because none is required. The commands are given and they are obeyed. Not because the one who obeys agrees or understands, but because the consequences of disobedience are too terrible to risk. The words hang in the air between them, carrying the weight of everything that cannot be said. In the ledgers and inventories that record the wealth of households, a strange equality appears, though it is not an equality that honours humanity. The enslaved person is listed alongside the tools and the livestock, valued in the same currency, described in the same spare language. A plough 40 shillings, a cow 30 shillings, a man 50 pounds. The numbers reduce a life to a figure, a body to a price, a soul to an entry in a book. This is how value is measured, in pounds and shillings, in the cold arithmetic of ownership. The language of these documents is efficient, practical, devastating in its matter, of factness. A woman of childbearing age is worth more than an older woman, because she can produce more enslaved children who will themselves become property. A man with skills is worth more than a man without, because his labour can be sold at a higher rate. The calculations are made without embarrassment, without apology, as natural as calculating the value of a field or a barn. This is how the system works, how it has always worked, how it will continue to work until something changes. The threat of separation hangs over every enslaved family, like a storm that might break at any moment. A husband can be sold away from a wife, a child from a mother, a parent from a children, and there is nothing that can be done to prevent it. The law does not recognize the bonds of family among those who are property. It recognizes only the rights of owners, the claims of creditors, the demands of an economy built on the buying and selling of human beings. Every day that a family remains together is a small victory against the odds, a temporary reprieve from a separation that may come tomorrow or next year or never, but is always possible. The fragility of these family bonds is known to everyone, lived by everyone, feared by everyone. A child who is sold away becomes a memory, a name spoken in prayers, a hope of reunion that is almost certainly vain. A parent who is taken leaves a gap that cannot be filled, a grief that cannot be expressed, a loss that is compounded by the knowledge that it could have been prevented by nothing. The love is as real as any love, the pain as sharp as any pain, but neither is recognized by the system that creates them. Yet even within this system, within these constraints that seem absolute, there is room for small acts of resistance, tiny assertions of humanity that cannot be completely crushed. A worker slows his pace when no one is watching, making the task last longer, claiming a small portion of time as his own. A tool is dropped in a way that damages it slightly, requiring repair, requiring attention, taking something from the master, even if it is only a few minutes of a blacksmith's day. These acts are small, so small they might not even be noticed, but they accumulate, they matter. They say that the person doing them is still a person, still capable of choice. Knowledge is withheld as well as shared. The enslaved worker knows things about the land, about the crops, about the seasons, that could make the master's enterprise more profitable. Some of this knowledge is given freely because it makes the work easier, because it reduces suffering. But some is kept back, held in reserve, a small treasure that cannot be taken by force. The master may own the body, but he does not own the mind, cannot reach into it and extract what is hidden there. This is a form of freedom, small but real, a space that belongs only to the one who holds it. At night, when the work is done, and the master's family has retreated to their own spaces, the enslaved gather in their quarters and claim a few hours for themselves. Stories are told, songs are sung, prayers are offered, children are held and loved, marriages are celebrated, grief is shared. This time is not given but taken, carved from the darkness when no one is watching, a small autonomous space within a system that denies autonomy. Here, in the flickering light of a small fire, away from the eyes that watch all day, something like freedom exists, fragile and temporary but real. The experience of slavery is not the same everywhere, though its essence is the same. In the South, on the large plantations, it takes its most visible form. Hundreds of people working vast fields of tobacco or rice or cotton, their lives organised entirely around the production of crops they will never consume. The scale of it is overwhelming. The numbers so large that individuals can disappear into the mass, their names unknown to the owner, their faces indistinguishable. Here the system is most efficient, most brutal, most complete. In the North, slavery looks different, but it is still slavery. Enslaved people live in households, work alongside their owners, are fewer in number and therefore more visible as individuals. But visibility does not mean freedom. They are still property, still subject to sale, still denied the most basic rights. The intimacy of northern slavery, the closeness of living in the same house, eating the same food, sharing the same space, does not change the fundamental fact of ownership. It may even make it harder, the proximity a constant reminder of the line that cannot be crossed. In the ports, enslaved labour is essential to the commerce that drives the economy. Men and women load and unload ships, build barrels, mend sails, do the countless tasks that keep trade moving. They are part of the bustle and noise of the waterfront, their labour visible to everyone, their status known to everyone. The ships that arrive bring more enslaved people from across the ocean, and the ships that depart carry goods produced by enslaved labour. The whole system is connected. A web of commerce and violence that spans the Atlantic and reaches into every corner of this new nation. And everywhere, in every region, in every household, the system is simply there, accepted as natural, as inevitable as the way things are. People do not question it because it has always been this way, because their prosperity depends on it, because the alternative is too terrible to contemplate. The silence around it is not accidental. It is constructed, maintained, enforced by the same forces that maintain the system itself. To speak against it is to risk everything, to challenge not just an institution, but a whole way of life. The names of rivers and mountains and valleys carry memories that most people do not hear when they speak them. You say the word, and it rolls off your tongue, familiar and ordinary. And you do not think about where it came from, whose voice first shaped it, what it meant to the people who lived here long before anyone who looks like you arrived. But the names remain stubborn and persistent, outlasting the people who gave them. They are useful, these names, because they describe the land accurately, because they point to places that need pointing to, because language does not easily let go of what it has once held. You walk past a river and its name comes to you without thought, a sound that has been spoken for thousands of years by thousands of mouths, most of them belonging to people whose lives were completely different from yours. You do not know their language, their customs, their beliefs, but you know the name they gave to this water, and in speaking it, you carry something of them forward, whether you intend to or not. The land itself remembers even when people forget. The knowledge of how to live on this land, how to use its resources, how to survive its seasons, came from somewhere. The crops that feed you, the corn and beans and squash, were developed over centuries by people who understood plants in ways that you do not. The techniques for hunting, for tracking and trapping and killing were refined by generations who depended on them completely. The medicines that ease your pains, the herbs and roots and barks that treat your illnesses, were discovered by people who tested them on themselves and passed the knowledge down. All of this you have inherited without acknowledgement, without thanks, without even awareness of where it came from. The trails you walk were walked by others long before you, their feet wearing the same paths, their eyes seeing the same views. The places where you camp, where you stop to rest, where you find water and shelter, were known to them as well. The land is marked by their presence, in ways you cannot see, in stone arrangements, and cleared spaces, and the subtle evidence of long habitation. You walk through a landscape that is dense with history, but you do not read it because you have not learned how. Sometimes you encounter them, the people whose names the rivers still carry. An encounter on a path, a meeting at a trading post, a visit to a settlement. The interactions are careful, guarded, shaped by years of suspicion and occasional violence. You trade with them, furs for metal, food for cloth, information for information. The goods pass between you, and you watch each other's faces, each other's hands, each other's eyes, reading what can be read, hiding what must be hidden. Trust is fragile, built slowly and destroyed quickly, a currency as valuable as any coin. The meetings are recorded in diaries and letters, written down by those who can write, preserved for reasons that have nothing to do with the people described. You read these accounts, and you see how the writers saw, through their eyes and their prejudices and their limited understanding. The people they describe are strangers, exotic, sometimes noble, sometimes savage, always other. The complexity of their lives, the richness of their cultures, the depth of their histories, are invisible to the writers, reduced to a few observations, a few judgments, a few lines in a journal. The language that describes them is often in the past tense, even when they are still here, still present, still living their lives as if they are already gone, already vanished, already part of history rather than the present. This way of speaking does something, prepares the mind for an absence that has not yet occurred, makes it easier to accept what is coming. You hear it, and you absorb it without thinking. The assumption that these people will not always be here, that their time is passing, that the future belongs to others. The land is described as empty, as unused, as waiting for someone to make something of it. This description ignores what is actually there, the fields and villages and hunting grounds, the places where people have lived for centuries. But it serves a purpose, justifies what is being done, makes it seem natural and right. The land is empty, so we fill it. The land is unused, so we use it. The logic is circular but effective, repeated, until it becomes truth. In the quiet spaces, in the moments when you are alone and thinking, you might wonder about what was here before, who lived here, what their lives were like. The questions come and go, not pressing, not urgent, but present. The names on the land remind you, the knowledge in your hands reminds you, the occasional encounter reminds you. Something was here, something that is still here in ways that are hard to name. It does not go away just because you do not see it. It persists, in memory and language, and the slow persistence of people who refuse to disappear. The evening deepens and these thoughts, if they arise at all, fade into the background of the day's end. The work is done, the fire is lit, the household gathers. Outside, beyond the circle of light, the land stretches away into darkness, holding its secrets and its memories, waiting for whatever comes next. And somewhere on that land, other fires burn, other people gather, other voices speak the old names and remember the old ways. They are there, in this same year, this same country, this same moment, living their lives as you live yours. Separate but connected by the ground beneath your feet and the long history that brought you both here. The light begins to change as the afternoon moves toward its end, the angle of the sun shifting in ways that the body registers before the mind notices. The shadows lengthen, stretching across the ground in shapes that are familiar from 1,000 other evenings. You feel the change in the quality of the light, the way it softens and warms, losing the harsh brightness of midday and taking on something gentler, something that speaks of endings. The body knows what this means without being told. It has felt this shift every day of your life, and it responds with a subtle relaxation, a letting go of the tension that has carried you through the hours of labour. The muscles that have worked all day begin to anticipate release. You feel it in your shoulders, your back, your arms, a loosening that is not yet rest but is the promise of rest. The work is not done but it is ending, and the body knows this even when the mind is still focused on the task at hand. There is one more row to hoe, one more piece to shape, one more animal to tend, and then the day's labour will be complete. The knowledge of this carries you through the final efforts, gives you the energy to finish what you have started. The tools that have been in your hands all day are cleaned and returned to their places. The hoe is wiped free of soil. The axe is checked for damage. The hammer is set back on its hook. Each tool finds its familiar spot, waiting for tomorrow when hands will reach for it again. There is satisfaction in this return, in the order of things, in knowing that when morning comes everything will be where it should be. The tools are part of the household too, and they deserve the same care at the end of the day as at the beginning. A final round of checks must be made before the day can truly end. The animals are looked in on, counted, ensured that they have what they need for the night. The fire is assessed, its needs anticipated, fuel set nearby for the morning's rekindling. The stores are checked, the door secured, the small details that could become problems if neglected. These checks are automatic, performed without thought, but they matter. A gate left unlatched, a fire left untended, a tool left in the weather. These small oversights can have consequences that echo through the next day and beyond. In the space between the end of work and the beginning of the evening meal, there is a small window of time that belongs to no particular task. It is not long, barely enough to notice, but in that moment the day pauses and something else appears. People gather who have been apart all day, drawn together by the fading light and the shared knowledge that the work is done. Stories begin, small fragments of narrative that will grow into longer tales as the evening progresses. Someone recalls something that happened years ago, someone else adds a detail, and the story takes shape between them, a creation of the moment that will be told again and will change each time. Cards appear sometimes, brought out from wherever they are kept, shuffled and dealt on whatever surface is available. The game is simple, the stakes small, the pleasure in the playing rather than the winning. The cards move from hand to hand, the bets are placed and collected, the quiet competition adding a spark to the evening's calm. Then the game ends as suddenly as it began, the cards gathered and returned to their place, the moment of play folded back into the ordinary. Music can start without announcement, without planning. Someone picks up an instrument, a fiddle or a flute, or simply begins to sing, and the sound fills the space in a way that feels natural, inevitable. The tunes are familiar, passed down through generations, known to everyone, even if no one can say where they came from. Feet tap without conscious decision. Hands find rhythms on knees or tabletops. Voices join in when the song invites them. The music does not demand attention, but it receives it anyway, drawing people together in a shared experience that needs no words. As the darkness deepens outside, the family draws closer together inside. The fire becomes the centre, the point around which everyone arranges them. People sit nearer than they would during the day, drawn by the warmth and by something else, something harder to name. The presence of others is comforting as the night closes in, a reassurance that no one is alone in the darkness. Bodies find positions that allow for both warmth and comfort, shoulders touching, children leaning against parents, the closeness that the day's work made impossible. Now, silence in these gatherings is not awkward, not something that needs to be filled. It is simply part of the evening, as natural as the crackle of the fire or the occasional word that passes between people. You can sit for long moments without speaking and feel no pressure to break the quiet. The silence itself is a kind of communication, a shared experience that words would only disturb. In it, thoughts can wander, memories can surface, the mind can settle into the same rest that the body is beginning to find. The children, who have been in motion all day, gradually quiet as the evening progresses. Their play becomes slower, their voices softer, their bodies finally accepting that the day is ending. They find places near the adults, curled against a mother's side or tucked into a corner with a blanket. Their eyes grow heavy, their movements still, and one by one they drift toward the sleep that has been waiting for them. The household contracts around them, the adults continuing their quiet evening, while the children slip away into dreams. Before the night can fully settle, there are last preparations to make. The firewood is checked, more brought in if needed, stacked where it will be dry and accessible. The water bucket is filled, enough for the night's needs and the morning's first tasks. The door is secured, not against enemies exactly, but against the night itself, against the wind and the cold and the small creatures that might find their way in. These actions are so familiar that they require no thought, the hands performing them, while the mind is already elsewhere, already settling into the evening's rest. The acceptance of darkness is something learned early and never forgotten. The night comes whether you are ready or not, and there is no point in fighting it. You know that the dark will bring its own kind of life, its own sounds and movements and possibilities, and you accept them as you accept everything else. The door closed against the outside does not shut out the night completely. It only marks the boundary between the household and the world, a line that is real but not absolute. The evening meal is served, drawn from the same sources that fed the morning and midday meals. The pot that hung over the fire earlier has been added to, transformed, its contents now a stew or a porridge that combines whatever was available. The meat, if there was any, has been stretched as far as it could go, its flavour permeating the grains and vegetables that make up the bulk of the meal. The bread that was hard this morning has softened in the warmth. Its texture changed, but its substance unchanged. There is no distinction between the courses of a meal here. No separation of one thing from another. Everything goes into the same bowl, is eaten with the same spoon, becomes part of the same experience. The flavours blend together, the meat and grain and vegetables losing their separate identities, and becoming something new, something that belongs to this meal alone. You eat it without commentary, without judgment, simply accepting what has been provided. The fire is the only light, its flames dancing and flickering, casting shadows that move across the walls and faces. The light is not steady, not reliable in the way that later lighting would be, but it is enough. You see what you need to see. The faces of those around you, the food in your bowl, the hands that reach and pass and serve. The darkness beyond the fire's reach is simply there, accepted, not threatening. The utensils are few, a spoon for each person perhaps, carved from wood and worn smooth by years of use. Knives are not needed at the table, because the food has already been cut, prepared in ways that make knives unnecessary. Forks are rare, not missed, the fingers serving well enough for most purposes. The meal is eaten without ceremony, without the elaborate rituals that later centuries would attach to dining. The food is shared, passed from hand to hand, each person taking what they need. There is no sense that this belongs to one person more than another. The pot is common, the bread is common, the meal belongs to everyone. Children are served first often, their needs prioritized. Then the adults take what remains. There is enough, not plenty but enough, and that is all that is asked. Words are few during the meal. The day's work is done. The evening's talk will come later. But now there is only eating, the quiet satisfaction of hunger met. The sounds are of spoons against bowls, of chewing and swallowing, of the fire shifting in its place. These sounds are enough, filling the space that words might otherwise occupy. When the meal is done, the remnants are gathered. What cannot be eaten now may be eaten tomorrow, saved in the pot to continue its slow transformation. The scraps go to the animals, to the chickens that will be waiting in the morning, to the pig that will turn anything into meat. Nothing is thrown away, because nothing is worthless, because the line between waste and resource is not a line at all. The pot is cleaned as well as it can be. A small amount of water swished around, wiped with a cloth, set aside for tomorrow. The water used is saved, not wasted, poured where it can do some good, rather than simply discarded. The fire is adjusted, prepared for the night. The careful arrangement of embers that will keep it alive until morning. When you stand from the meal, you feel the change in your body. The hunger that was there is gone, replaced by a fullness that is not heavy but sufficient. You are not stuffed, not uncomfortable, simply satisfied in the way that matters. The food has done its work, provided what was needed, and now you can rest. The satisfaction is not pleasure exactly, not the joy of eating something delicious, but something quieter and deeper. It is the knowledge that you have been fed, that your body has what it needs, that you will sleep warm and wake ready for whatever comes. The food is fuel, yes, but it is also more than that. It is the product of labour and love and the cooperation of the world, and in eating it, you are connected to all of that. There might be a thought of tomorrow's food, a brief awareness that what you have eaten today must be replaced, that the stores are lower than they were, that the work of providing never ends. But this thought is distant, not pressing, easily set aside for the night. Tomorrow will bring its own concerns. Tonight there is only rest. The fire holds the centre of attention now. Its flames the brightest thing in the room, its warmth the focus of every body. The circle around it is tight, everyone drawn close by the need for heat and by something else, the pull of the flame itself. People have gathered around fires since before they were people, and the habit is too deep to question. The reach of the fire's light is limited, a circle beyond which the darkness gathers. You can see the faces of those across from you, the hands of those beside you, but the corners of the room are lost in shadow. This limitation is not a problem. It concentrates attention, focuses the mind on what is near, creates an intimacy that full light would destroy. The best positions near the fire are contested without being fought over. Those who need warmth most, the old and the very young, are placed closest. Others arrange themselves around them, accepting their place in the order of warmth. The negotiation is silent. Understood, part of the evening's ritual. Smoke rises from the fire, finding its way toward the chimney. If the chimney is working well, filling the room if it is not. You have learnt to live with smoke, to position yourself where it bothers you least, to accept it as part of the price of warmth. Your eyes adjust, your lungs adjust, your body learns to tolerate what cannot be avoided. The smell of smoke is so constant that you barely notice it, though a visitor would remark on it immediately. The fire speaks its own language, a vocabulary of crackles and pops, of sudden flares and quiet settling. A pocket of moisture in the wood releases with a sharp sound, a burst of steam that briefly brightens the flame. A log shifts as it burns through, settling into a new position with a soft thud. These sounds are familiar, comforting, The voice of the fire telling you that it is alive, that it is doing its work, that it will hold the night at bay. Even in the evening, work continues, though it is work of a different kind. The needle moves through cloth, closing a tear that appeared during the day, reinforcing a seam that was starting to give way. The thread is carefully saved, used sparingly, each stitch placed with the knowledge that it extends the life of something precious. The mending pile is never empty, because clothes are never perfect, because wear is constant, and repair is constant, because this work too is never done. A tool that needs attention is brought out, examined, adjusted. A handle that has loosened is tightened. A blade that has dulled is sharpened. The evening light is poor for this work, the fire insufficient for fine detail, but the hands know what to do. They have done it so many times that eyes are almost unnecessary, the feel of the tool telling them what needs to be done. For those who spin, the evening is an opportunity. The spindle turns, the fibres twist, the thread grows inch by inch. The rhythm of spinning is soothing, meditative, a way of being productive while also being at rest. The hands work while the mind wanders, and by the end of the evening a length of thread has been created that will become part of something larger. The work of evening is different from the work of day. It is slower, gentler, more forgiving of error. The light is poor, and everyone knows it. So mistakes are accepted, corrected when possible, ignored when not. The pace is set by the fire and the darkness and the bodies that are gradually settling towards sleep. There is no urgency here, only the quiet continuation of the endless small tasks that keep a household together. Stories flow through the evening, like the smoke through the room, finding their way into every corner. They are old stories mostly, told so many times that everyone knows them, but that is part of their power. The familiarity is comforting, a reminder that some things endure, that the past is still present, that the people who came before are not forgotten. A story about a grandfather, a journey, a hardship overcome. A story about a storm, a crop saved, a community coming together. A story about something funny that happened years ago. Something that still makes people smile, even though the people in it are gone. The stories change slightly with each telling, details shifting, growing, adapting to the audience and the moment. No one minds the changes. They are part of the story too. The roles of teller and listener shift through the evening. One person tells a story, then another, then someone else. Children listen, absorbing the narratives that will shape their understanding of who they are and where they come from. The stories teach without meaning to, passing on values and history and the subtle knowledge of how to live. When music fills the room, it changes everything. The instrument, if there is one, is something simple, a fiddle or a flute or a drum made from whatever was available. The tunes are old, known to everyone, passed down through generations without ever being written down. A child learns them by hearing them, by trying to play along, by absorbing them until they become part of what they know. The singing is communal when it happens. One person starts and others join, not in harmony exactly, but in a shared melody that fills the room and spills out into the night. The voices are not trained, not polished, but they are real, and they are together. And that is enough. The songs are about love and loss and work and hope, the same themes that have always moved people to sing. To sing is to participate, not to perform. Everyone who wants to sing can sing, and everyone who does not want to can listen, and both are acceptable. The music belongs to everyone, not to any individual. It rises and falls with the evening, with the fire, with the mood of those gathered, and when it ends, it leaves behind a quiet that is deeper and richer than before. As the evening wears on, the body sends clearer signals that rest is coming. The fire is tended one last time, the embers arranged carefully, covered with ash to slow their burning. This is a skill learned through years of practice, the right amount of ash to keep the coals alive without smothering them. The right arrangement to ensure that morning will find warmth waiting. The hands know exactly what to do, building a small mound that will hold its heat through the hours of darkness. The last check of the fire is a moment of quiet attention. A final connection with the source of warmth and light that has sustained the household through the day. You look at the embers, see the faint glow that will carry through the night, and you know that tomorrow will begin with this same fire, coaxed back to life by the same hands that tended it tonight. There is something reassuring in this continuity, this small victory over the cold and the dark. Clothes are adjusted for sleeping, though the adjustment may be minimal. Some garments are removed, some are kept on, depending on the cold and the comfort and the habits of a lifetime. The layers that protected through the day will also protect through the night, trapping warmth close to the body. The clothes are not put away carefully because they will be needed again in the morning, placed where they can be reached without searching. The night clothes, if they exist as a separate category, are simpler than the day clothes, looser, designed for rest rather than work. But many sleep in the same garments they wore through the day, seeing no reason to change what will only need to be changed again. The distinction between day and night, like so many distinctions here, is blurry practical, not worth worrying about. The chamber pot is brought close, placed where it can be reached in the darkness. Its presence is practical. An acknowledgement that the night is long and going outside is not always possible. It will be used and emptied in the morning, part of the daily round that no one discusses, but everyone performs. The small rituals of the body are simply part of life, accepted without embarrassment. The children are settled into their places, the sleeping arrangements adjusted to accommodate everyone. The youngest are placed where they will be warmest, where they can be reached if they wake, where they are surrounded by the bodies of those who love them. Blankets are arranged, shared, pulled tight against the cold. A last word, a last touch, a last moment of attention before sleep takes them. There is an awareness that children wake in the night, that they will need attention, that sleep will be interrupted. This is normal, expected, part of the pattern. The parents do not resent it because it is simply how things are. A child who wakes will be comforted, settled, return to sleep, and the night will continue. When finally you lie down, the body releases into the waiting rest. The muscles that have held tension all day let go. The mind that has been constantly aware begins to drift. The breath deepens and slows. The darkness that seemed so complete in the first hours of the night is now familiar, friendly even, a space in which to let go of everything. The first sleep comes quickly, a descent into unconsciousness that feels like falling. The body is ready, has been ready for hours, and it takes what it needs without hesitation. The sounds of the household fade, the fire's crackle becomes distant, the world narrows to the small space of your own awareness, and then disappears. For a time there is nothing, only the deep rest that the body has earned. Then, hours later, something shifts. The eyes open to darkness, the mind surfacing from dreams without knowing why. This is not an interruption, not a problem. It is simply how sleep works, how it has always worked, the natural rhythm of the night asserting itself. You lie in the darkness, awake but not restless, and listen to the breathing of those around you. The sounds are familiar, each person's rhythm distinct, a chorus of small noises that fills the room. The fire has faded to embers, their glow barely visible, a reminder that warmth still waits. The night is deep and quiet, the world outside still and waiting. In this waking time, thoughts come and go without urgency. The day that has passed, the day that is coming, the small concerns and large that fill a life, they drift through the mind like clouds present for a moment and then gone. There is no need to hold them, to solve them, to do anything with them. They simply are, and then some people pray in these waking moments, turning their thoughts toward whatever divinity they believe watches over them. Others plan, quietly rehearsing the tasks of the coming day. Others simply lie still, letting the darkness hold them, waiting for sleep to return. All of these responses are normal, accepted, part of what it means to live through the night. If someone else is also awake, there may be quiet words, a brief exchange that would not happen in daylight. The darkness creates its own intimacy, its own permission to speak of things that are usually left unsaid. A whisper, a touch, a small sound of acknowledgement, and then silence again. The connection is real, even if it is brief. Then, gradually the body signals that it is ready for more rest. The eyes grow heavy, the mind begins to drift, the awareness of the room and the others and the night begins to fade. Sleep reaches up and pulls you down again, gently, inevitably, and you sink into the second sleep that will carry you through until morning. In the deepest part of the night, when the darkness is most complete and the world most still, the body continues its quiet work. It adjusts to temperature changes without waking, pulling blankets closer or pushing them away. It responds to sounds, the creak of the house, the distant call of an animal, without fully surfacing into consciousness. It holds awareness at the edge, enough to notice danger if it comes, not enough to disturb rest. The pains of the day, the aches and strains that were so present during working hours, recede into the background. They are still there, the body knows them, but they do not demand attention. In sleep, the body can ignore what in waking it must accommodate. The distance between pain and awareness grows, and in that distance there is rest. Dreams come, as they always do, though they are rarely remembered in the morning. They are made of the day's experiences, the faces seen and words spoken, the tasks performed and the worries carried. They mix with older memories, with fears and hopes, with the deep currents of a life. The dreaming mind does its own work, processing and sorting and letting go, and by morning most of it will be forgotten. The dreams here are not analysed, not discussed as they might be in other times. They are simply part of the night, as natural as breathing. A dream that is particularly vivid might be mentioned in the morning, might become a small story shared over breakfast, but it carries no special weight. It is just what the mind does while the body rests. Even in the deepest sleep, some part of the mind remains on watch. It is the legacy of lives lived close to danger, of nights when a sound could mean a threat, of the ancient need to protect the sleeping group. This watchfulness is not conscious, not something you could describe, but it is there. A strange sound would bring you fully awake in an instant, ready to respond to whatever threatened. The trust that allows sleep is not simple. It is built on the knowledge that others are watching too, that the household shares the burden of vigilance, that you can let go because someone else will hold on. This mutual dependence is the foundation of everything. The reason that humans have always slept in groups, have always sought the warmth and safety of others. As the night moves toward its end, the sleep becomes lighter, the body beginning to prepare for waking. The darkness that seemed absolute is now slightly less so, though the change is too gradual to notice. The dreams become more active, more connected to the coming day, as if the mind is rehearsing for waking. The body stirs occasionally, shifts, settles again. The deepest darkness comes just before the dawn, a final intensification of the night that feels almost like a last embrace. In this hour, sleep is heaviest, most complete, the body taking its final rest before the demands of the day. It is a precious time, this last sleep, and the body clings to it, even as the light begins its slow return. Then, so gradually that it cannot be marked, the darkness begins to thin. The change is imperceptible at first, a lessening rather than a lightening, a shift in the quality of the blackness that surrounds everything. The eye catches it without knowing what it sees. The mind registers it without understanding. Something is different, the night is ending. A bird calls somewhere outside, a single tentative note testing the morning. Another answers, and another. And soon the chorus begins that will build into the full song of dawn. The animals stir in their places, sensing the change. The world is waking, and the night's long rule is over. The body knows before the mind does. Even in sleep, even in the deepest rest, something registers the shift. The dreams change, become lighter, more oriented toward the day. The breathing shifts, the muscles prepare. The long, slow process of waking begins. When finally the eyes open, the room is visible, shapes emerging from the darkness that held them all night. The fire has faded to ash, the warmth gone, the new day's first task waiting. The bodies around you begin to stir, the sounds of waking filling the space. The night is over, the day is here, and the whole cycle begins again. You lie for a moment, feeling the weight of your own body, the presence of those around you, the reality of being alive in this new day. It is the same as yesterday in so many ways. The same room, the same people, the same tasks waiting. But it is also different, completely different. A day that has never been lived before, full of possibilities that cannot be predicted. The body remembers yesterday's labour, feels the small aches and strains that have not yet been rested away. It knows what is coming, knows the work that waits, knows that the day will demand everything it has to give. But it is ready as it will ever be, rested enough to begin again. The light grows slowly, the room becoming clearer with each passing moment. The fire needs tending, the water needs fetching, the animals need feeding. All of it waits, patient and inevitable. The same demands that have greeted every morning of your life. There is comfort in this repetition, a reassurance that the world continues, that the patterns hold, that you know what to do. You rise as you have risen thousands of times before and begin the day. The night is done, the sleep has done its work, and you are here, alive, present, ready for whatever comes. The cycle continues, as it always has, as it always will, carrying you forward through another ordinary day in this ordinary life, in this year of Fae, in this world that is both new and old, both strange and familiar, both ending and beginning with every sunrise.